Hi, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the distinguished speakers and audience who are joined in and joining in now. Truly gives us a great pleasure and privilege to have a nice and up GWFM event. In fact, we started the 2021 with nice, and now we are ending the great event with association with nice. It's been a great combination between nice market leader in WFM solutions and GWFM as the biggest WFM community. It gives us an honor to have and host the ASEAN Summit again in 2021. We have great speakers, and each one carries kind of experience from more than 5 to 10 companies and more than 2 decades of experience that they carry. One is being a thought leader, other one is being a subject matter expert, third one is being a technical expertise in the WFM solutions. What a fantastic lineup of speakers that we have today. And today is the day that we're going to talk about the journey that we have gone through and almost ending 2021. We're going to have bits and pieces and art and science, and also the learnings from the failures, and also kind of success stories that we're going to have from each speakers. Especially the market trends in ASEAN market is something to know, because what happens in the office, we are busy being busy and we don't get to learn anything new, right? If you want to talk to anyone, we don't really get to connect with the speakers like this and get to listen to them with their ideas and thoughts and insights. So ASEAN Summit is a perfect platform where all the audience and all the WFM professionals across the region can listen to them and also get an opportunity to ask questions. Also, you could interact with any of the speakers that you want today. And also, we're going to talk about preparedness of 2022. What is the trends for 2022? Which is very, very important aspects of it. Like we just moving with the flow. And I'm seeing that WFM market is wide opening worldwide and booming than ever. And jobs are getting created, and technology solution is getting advanced. Customer experience has been shared, and business is growing, doubling and tripling the kind of growth which is happening. Fantastic platform to have all the great speakers, and let's listen to them. And want all of you to engage yourself. Feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. If you're talking to any speakers you want to, you could highlight it, and also you could raise your hand to ask any question to any particular speakers, so that we would unmute you on this. Okay. With this, let's talk about GWFM. Little bit about GWFM, what we do. In fact, we have been in existence since last 6 years. Since last 2 years, we've been present in North America, ANZ, Latin America, APAC, and EMEA. In fact, recently we have started a chapter in South Africa and the Middle East. And by 2022, we're going to be present in every country. We're going to have a separate chapter where we're going to have the lead at the local country, and we're going to reach out to every WFM professional's heart and soul. We want to provide this kind of platform. This platform doesn't belong to any of the person. It belongs to each one of you. Come join us and leverage. Join us on our social media. We are pretty big and also largest community in the world in the WFM area. You really learn a lot and network a lot. Also exchange a lot of thoughts and insights. Today we have the agenda. This is the agenda that we have inauguration speech and keynote speech from Mark, and another keynote from Nadia. Then we're going to have a roundtable. Trust me, roundtable is going to be something where I'm more interested in listening to the great speakers. And at the end, that we're going to keep the questions so that we move the flow, and we want to answer all the questions that you have, friends. Feel free. And GWFM is bringing in thought leadership into the market, where you want to solve the business problems. You want to help community, want to help the industry, how they can really grow, and networking, and also help learning. In fact, we have started with the community that we have, and also we have been known as awarding body. Every year we have 20 to 30 companies coming in and sharing their best practices and best technologies which they have developed internally, and also the externally. In fact, NICE has been one of the uh, finest products in the last year, and they continue to be. And besides NICE, we have other players who had participated and also shared their best practices as well. And also we had international hackathon. In fact, GWFM has been instrumental in bringing in a lot of innovations in WFM. We have done hackathons. Have you heard about hackathon where WFM folks doing it? It was confined to only to the technical and product development people. Right now we have WFM professionals are hackers and innovators, right? So, and also we had BWFM event recently, which we hosted. We had come out of the reality shows and then quiz programs. A lot of innovations that we brought in. And also GWFM is a corporate university where we have the courses which we offer right from RTA, forecasters, schedulers across these streams, including the Lean Six Sigma and Agile, all those things which we do. And we could learn more about GWFM and also get to meet up with all of us together. What I request all the attendees, feel free to raise your question. Raise your hand when you want to ask questions. We can have a two-way conversation with them. And also you could ask your question in the chat box. All right, so with this, let me not talk much about GWFM. We're all getting to know each other better. So it gives us a great pleasure inviting our first keynote speaker of the event, Mark. So with the Academy, we have introduction of Mark. Good to know Mark. Mark is pretty well known, has been in the WFM market since last 2 decades. Let's see that what is that he has done recent past, and get to know more about Mark.
Thank you, Shiva. A very good afternoon to all the distinguished speakers and the lovely participants that we have here. It gives me immense pleasure to give a brief introduction of Mark. He's a seasoned solution sales executive with over 2 decades of experience, specializing in customer experience transformations, product strategy, and pre-sales leadership. From regional training manager to a regional consulting manager to a director of solution sales to the current vice president solutions of APAC, Mark's journey of over 14 years at NICE has been very challenging and eventful. He has a proven record of architecting and delivering large-scale transformation gigs in customer experience, digital RPA, and deep analytics. Prior to NICE, Mark was with Dell Incorporation as a senior training specialist. He's known to be a very joyful person, yet someone with very deep technical knowledge and delivery experience. Welcome, Mark. Over to you.
Thanks, Srividya. Every time when somebody introduces me, I always feel a bit embarrassed and just thinking, is that me? Is that not? And sometimes when you have a pup behind you disagreeing with whatever you say, that's not true, then it makes it more challenging. It's just a joke. All right, guys, really nice meeting you. I know I've got a very limited time slot, but I would really love it to be engaging. Drop your questions in the chat. Happy to answer them as we go. Okay. Like Srividya said, I did start my journey at Dell, and I started, but the experience that she saw in LinkedIn probably is starting with training specialist, but I started my career as an agent. The best job that anybody can ever have in the world, right? Speaking to customers, making them happy, etc. I worked my way into the Dell contact center, and one of the roles that I did was WFM. Day one on my WFM team leader said, well, this is a bit of art and science, right? Art and science, art and science. That's what I believe WFM is all about. There's a lot of science to it, but you never get it right without a bit of art in it. And so you need to apply it. But in the last 2 years, what I've learned is WFM is just not art and science. It's superhero stuff, basically, right? The last couple of years, all the practitioners here have had like amazing stories where we made the impossible possible. We just got people home, we got them working, we got them still servicing our clients. We still made everything possible. And with the kind of ambiguity that we see in the world with new variants and everything, we're still doing that day in and day out. So to me, WFM practitioners are superhumans, right? Who make things possible. And recently, I think we are better off calling ourselves as not just workforce planners, but more as an engagement experts, because that's what our job is transforming into, right? Now, that's possibly what I want to talk to you today, right? How about relooking our thoughts on the workforce piece? Okay, and some of you are already doing it. It's not like I'm giving you a new concept. The market is already primed. We're seeing this happening again and again. Our days of SLA is slowly getting over, and we are starting to think XLA, the experience level assurance that we have to provide our clients, our own enterprises with. So in today's presentation, we're going to talk more and more about, as you take this journey from SLA and XLA, what are the key factors that you need to think about? What are the changes that you would encounter, and what does it take to really get there? So let's look for the case for change, right? The ones on the blue on the left side is something all of you wake up every morning and you can do it in your sleep, right? I know of WFM practitioners who know their demand forecasting, adjusting to the next 3%, 5% in their mind. They know how many people they need to be staffed, either without even needing a WFM system, considering what's the shrinkage on that particular day. You guys are that good. You've done it again, right? So demand forecasting, time and attendance, whether you're going to do strategic planning for the year, quarter, right? Or just getting your scheduling rolled out, or optimizing cost and getting your integrations right with different systems. This is your today's problem. And it's been our problem for quite some time. And we get this problem in different flavors, variances, and challengers, etc., right? But the last few years have moved us into something else. Now, most of the companies, and it's quite evident in BPOs as we see, is they're not signing up contracts to deliver SLAs. Yes, we are worried about how fast you pick up the phone, but we are more worried about what kind of experience that you're delivering to the end consumer, right? Previously, it used to be a quality team problem. Previously, it used to be a team leader's problem. But then most of the enterprises today have understood that if you cannot staff or you cannot get the right kind of workforce in front of the consumer, then you're not delivering the right experience. So workforce planning becomes very, very, very critical, right? So let's feel the move of moving from SLA to XLA, right? So there's no more time value. It's not about not just 8 hours of login. It is about how many amazing experiences that you can deliver, right? Whether it's making sure that the customer gets his intent done, or whether I'm proactively trying to engage him in multiple channels and even making sure that he gets his unknown intents addressed. It's all about moving from time value to an experience value. What kind of experiences you deliver, right? It doesn't mean time is not important. Time is important, but then we're moving our core idea from time value to experience value. We're talking about availability today, making sure we have the right workforce available to meet the right customer. But we are also making sure that we provide the right experience continuity, whether it's on the same journey where the customer meets multiple workforce personnel, whether it's a bot or a person. We want to make sure that the experience has a continuity, or even after you've delivered a transaction to a customer. If you are a telco, let's say you've installed a broadband, make sure you reach back to him another 3 days, 4 days later and say, well, do you still have the same experience in your mind when you think about us, right? And do you still use the workforce to do that? So how do we make sure that the experience gets continued, whether in one journey or in multiple journeys? And that's what we're thinking about. So it's no more who's the right available person to service this. It's about how can you keep sustaining the experience as you move on. We're talking about occupancy, absolutely, but at the same time, we're talking about how do we provide the right flexibility to our workforce, right? And most of you, I think almost all of you would agree today that with the kind of the great resignations that's going around, with the kind of war for talent on the tech, the most important aspects today companies use to attract talent is the kind of flexibility that we can provide to the workforce. And the guys who are responsible, who are in the forefront of delivering that flexibility is nothing but you guys, right? And moving from handling time to journey time, it's no more single transactions, right? It doesn't matter like how long did you actually spend, what is the cost? It's the entire journey that you have to look at. And at the last, it's no more workforce is not just people. We are talking about the entire workforce at our disposal. When I talk about entire workforce, I'm talking about agents, back office personnel, virtual agents, bots, anything that you can think of. They're all workforce today, right? So a hybrid workforce is a different kind of thought process for us to plan, because we are not planning agents coming to office. We're actually planning the entire engagement that your enterprise wants to provide to their end customer. It's a totally different game altogether, okay? So that is the case for change. Why would you move from an SLA-based workforce planning to an experience level-based workforce planning? Having spoken about that, I want to discuss two important goals today, and I want to keep it really simple for you guys, because when you talk about XLA, there are two important things that you want to consider. One, what is the goal of the enterprise to engage with their consumer? That's important for you to know as a workforce expert, because that is going to determine the strategy on how you're going to have the right workforce to meet the consumer. So you have to be very, very clear on what your enterprises want and how they want to engage with their end consumer. The second part is just opposite to it. I really want to know what my enterprise is planning to engage with its workforce. So two different spectrums, but they are going to be the key inputs for you as you go down the XLA route, okay? So let's pick up the first piece today. The engagement models that many of the enterprises prefer today, and what is their goal? They're more focused on how to engage, right? And we've spoken this to death in many presentations, so I don't want to get more into it, but what's clear here is your enterprises want to engage their consumer in the channel the consumer prefers. It's not about low cost, high cost. It's not about the channel with high resolution, low resolution, easy, not easy. They just want to go and meet them where the consumers are there, right? So just take the channel which they're comfortable with. Second, they want to get them talking, not necessarily to a person, but somebody who can give them resolutions. And this is why conversational AI becomes a key topic in today's, CX frameworks. And the next part is they want to automate all of this as much as possible, which is still a part of workforce, right? I mean, if you can have an automated resolution, I'm not talking just about chatbots, I'm not talking just about IVR, right? You can have an automated self-service that can augment a human service, then that's a part of your workforce planning, right? The last one is obviously the smart workforce, which you've got real engaged human workforce behind all of this to make it really successful. Now, this picture makes our XLA story a bit more complex. Should I just think about humans? Should I think about channels? Should I think about bots? The answer is you have to think about all of them, because they come together to deliver the engagement the enterprises are expecting today, right? And you are responsible for that. Let's have a look at some of these things, right? So I'm just putting up a channel journey here, which you guys, most of you are quite familiar. I'll just open up all of this. I don't want to have like a teaser out there, but guys, this is a pretty simple slide. You guys live this in and day out, right? You've got tons of customers coming to you in different channels, right? And then you're talking about on the top, on the left-hand side, there is an email that somebody is processing and gets interrupted by a chat, as simple as that, because we're talking about digital channels. And you can have people getting multiple simultaneous chats, pretty common in our world, right? And then you can also have somebody having multiple chats with some of them out of focus, some of them within focus, right? And then you can also have asynchronous scenario, and we are hitting this more and more. It's not about chats, it's about messaging channels. And just to go back a little bit and talk about asynchronous scenarios, it's pretty much like, how do I do a planning for WhatsApp? The customer gets in, types a message, goes off for 2 hours, comes back, types in. There is no handling time here. It's a completely different view and world of it. So you've got the problem of asynchronous there. And then you've got an unexpected problem of elevation. Yeah, and the customer quickly decides that this channel is not the channel that he thinks he's going to get the resolution. We are giving him tons of options. The companies are giving them tons of options to quickly elevate a conversation to a phone call or a chat or an email, anything else. Now, these are all quite unpredictable in the world of WFM. I know historical data will give you something, but the more and more the customer becomes digital affinity, historical data is just one part of the puzzle, guys. There used to be days when we say that, give me the data, 3 years data, I will tell you what's going to happen, right? But that's not going to be true anymore. The amount of variations that you see just by looking at these scenarios, you are entering into a zone which is quite tricky. Okay, then you've got the social piece. Then there is a dedicated amount of messaging. Put all of together. Your new goal is to make sure that you have a seamless experience delivered to the end customer, and make sure that you have the right workforce available at the right point of time to address all of these scenarios. Okay, and some of it you might not have a lot of historical data to support. That is your new challenge in delivering an XLA. So in short, if you are looking from an enterprise side of the world, right, and look at what your companies are trying to deliver to the end consumer, and then you want to do a proper strategic thought, think process around workforce planning, then digital has to be a part of it. If it isn't, then there is something, a big piece that's missing in it, right? And when I say digital, it's not about, again, I don't want you guys to think about like integrations, feeds, etc. Yes, all of them are important. Can you connect to messaging channel? Yep, that's important. Can you connect to the new cloud ACDs? Yep, that's important. All of that is important. Can you connect to a back office computer? Yep, important. But what's more important for us is to stay behind integration and then look at things which are more important for us. Like, can I differentiate scenarios where the contacts are looking for immediate responses versus deferred responses, right? Can I actually look at a forecast based on, deferred work capacity, right? Which is critical in digital. Can I think about simultaneous interactions, not just concurrency? It's beyond that. It's not about chat concurrency. It's just multiple interactions from the same customer or from a similar work type from different scenarios. How do I handle interruptible interactions? What kind of priorities are assigned to it? What happens to my world when there is long asynchronous interactions? Let me give you an example. We're talking about a queue where people are trying to fix appointment for technicians, and it just goes back and forth, back and forth. These are not like, and next day morning they reschedule, then the evening they come back and ask for a different time. Long asynchronous interactions with no endpoint at sight. We spoke about elevative interactions. The next one on the left is probably my personal favorite, is how do you factor all of this with employees' cognitive limits? Right? There is a cognitive limit for every personnel, whether it's back office, front office, anybody, right? How do you understand those cognitive limits, and how do you plan that into your workforce planning, right? You guys know much more than me, but these are some of these things that you need to really bring into as a capability or as a thought process into your DNA as we go down, and as the enterprise expectations are changing. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to go into workforce. But before that, I want to quickly summarize, guys. We spoke about two key things that drive, right? The first part we spoke about was changing expectations of companies, and you all know digital channels are picking up. And one key piece is, if you want to deliver an XLA, you need to look at some of these different work items or some of these different scenarios that will come into your world and be ready for it. That's the first part. Now, the second part is the traditional workforce got disrupted too. Pandemic was, yes, one big thing. It is a bad thing in many ways, but some of the times it also helped us with the adoption of a few other things, like work at anywhere and things like that, right? For us as workforce experts or engagement experts, this gave us a huge set of challenges to fight for, right? So now what happens in a really disrupted workforce? Okay. One of the key things in work from anywhere is the control, or the control that you think that you have over your workforce in real time. Because the safe net of office is gone. You really can't walk into a production floor and decide how things are going to work, because people are working from different places. But your impact have to be real time, because obviously the customers are still customers and they're still reaching out in different channels. So you've got a distributed setup now, people working from everywhere, but you've got a problem to solve real time. So real-time fixes are really, really important to me, right? So you've got a real-time fluctuation in an intraday scenario, right? How do you quickly understand what's the staffing requirements? How do you identify the open opportunities present to you? I always feel as a workforce planner, right? Every crisis is an opportunity, and I've enjoyed it as much as I've, cried about it. Is like when you are posed with some real, threatening scenarios on an intraday, it also gives you an opportunity to plan better for a future, or maybe gives you a relief in the subsequent hours, days, etc. So how do you surface those opportunities? And most importantly, how do you engage it? Not just with an agent, but also with the digital workforce, right? And with the agent, it's more critical that you engage them in a much convenient fashion, right? And at the last, make sure those engaged employees come and help you fix this problem. So there's no time as real time. If you identify something at real time, how do you surface those opportunities? How do you communicate it? And how does your engaged employees solve the problem? That's an important framework for you to think about. Okay. I just want to throw an example. I know it's a keynote, but then nothing works without an example. So, in our world of life, right, just think about an intraday scenario. Okay. So there's probably a change, change in shifts, change in time, change schedule, etc. There is a request that goes to a supervisor, and then the agent takes time, the admin looks at it, and then somebody approves or disapproves. And then there is a process to keep it in pending and evaluate few stuff and come back to approve. Or there is, like, after approval, there's a set of changes that needs to happen. In our world, it's not about the decision time. It's about the processing time and the wait time, which actually calculates into a digital time, which are those precious few hours that we really need to get things going in real time, right? There's a lot of communication that needs to be right. There has to be reassignments that needs to be right. Otherwise, the follow-on task gets affected and there is a downflow of issues, right? There's obviously cost on the variances and interruptions, not to mention, and last, the staffing errors, which we really don't want to see in our sheets, right? Now think differently. Think about a platform or an engine that starts looking at intelligent automation. I know you guys are quite familiar with intraday automation, but I'm asking you to think it not just with the intraday, but also with the right engagement model, right? So that's the piece I'm trying to talk to you about. It's not about just automating intraday, but how do you communicate and how do you engage that with your employees, right? So that could be pre-approved scenarios, which could just go and sit into employees' mobile apps and calendars, right? Or there could be offers that you could pass on to people in the intraday, which people can just choose to accept. Think about all the flexi scheduling scenarios that you've encountered. If you think that is an opportunity and you can pass it on to your workforce to make more money or to help you to manage an XLA, then yeah, how do you pass on that offer to a more millennial workforce at their fingertips, right? And how do you handle others? And this is around adherence, it's around different scenarios. How can you make it engaged? How can you make it acceptable to your end employees? That's exactly what I want you guys to think. So how do you take an engaged workforce and work on real time when they're all working from anywhere? Right. So I believe there are some 6 things that you would need to focus on. First of all, you need to focus on the channel, on the reachability. Right, today everybody is a mobile holder. Like I said, enterprises try to talk to their consumers in the channel they like. And it is always better for you to talk to your employees or your workforce in the channels that's more convenient, which today has happened to be mobile, right? Reach them at any time, anywhere, right? Give them full visibility and access over their destiny. In this case, their schedules, their thought processes, even bring the details around the self-service options that's augmenting them, etc. So they have a full picture and visibility of what is expected out of them, right? And if we go back to a good old way of measuring occupancy and productivity, what's more important for us today is timely notifications, again, at the channel of choice of employees to them. So they really know where they stand today, right? And they don't go to the end of the day or end of the hour and figure out, oh, I should have done that. My goal was on this, but I didn't meet that. So the notifications that needs to flow along with, the way you access it. And not just in modifications, but also provide them opportunity inbuilt into a workforce tool to develop and improve, right? We always say that, let's plan workforce differently, and then let's coach them differently. Let's give them a self-improvement option differently. But if you look together, end of the day, it's an extension of workforce, right? After you've told them where they need to get their act together, it also is a better option for you to provide them not just the alerts, but also call to action in the same platform, allowing them to focus on what needs to be done, what are their core development or opportunity areas, and what do they consider as a self-improvement area. And do all of that, and nothing gets done without a carrot in our world, and we know that better, right? What is the right motivation that you can put into the tool, and right, what are the different forms of recognition that you can build into the tool? Put them holistically. The top left is how do you get to them? The bottom right is to tell them that how do you notify them on time on where they are at? And on the bottom left is to tell them that, how can they have the entire development area built into the same platform? And the top right is to tell them that, well, now that you're doing good what you are, we would like to recognize and motivate you much better. So I'm again closing the loop on this. Your future work from anywhere employees would also prefer a channel of choice, which obviously is more mobile and more friendly. And they would prefer full visibility, and they would prefer an opportunity for themselves to improve. And you would need an opportunity to intervene at real time to make their lives more better, easier, faster, and also control the overall XLA much better. The last part is I spoke about two key things. Now, what would you take to build a future out of this? First, the two parts, right? I mean, always one is the tech, the other is the workforce. So let's talk about the tech. When you are working on a platform, just make sure that you have the right platform that is truly able to handle the digital world, right? We spoke about several capabilities when we spoke about enterprise expectations, and you need a platform that can truly handle the digital world. WFM is mission critical. If there's anybody who told you otherwise, I'm sure they can count on their last 2 years and they would understand that you guys are as mission critical as an ACD or as a CCOE or any other important operations in a customer experience center. So always try and stay current on the platform, stay available on the platform, and most preferably stay on cloud. Makes your life more easier, right? Imagine you getting auto updated just like your mobile apps, and you get your latest and greatest and stay like available for 99.9999%. That makes your life much more easy. And the next part is you are also looking at a platform that can handle super employees. There is no more just advanced skill sets, multi-skills, etc. Now these are like a community of experts where you're looking at contact centers, branch, retails, bots, everybody trying to deliver an experience. So you really need a platform to consider all of them, and a platform that allows you to simulate the experience, right, at any point of time, even multiple simulations on what works and what doesn't work, and then think about forecasting and scheduling your workforce accordingly. So the rise of super employees are there. I mean, this used to be a trend, something back. It's actually a retro coming back. We've seen tons of RFPs coming on this way. So it's good for you to think about in this direction, saying, can my platform think of all dimensions, simulate in different ways for me to make the right decisions? In terms of workforce, I think what's more key is if you are having a strategic objective with respect to enterprise workforce planning or engagement planning, then the first thing that you need to have is flexibility. That should be the core of everything that you think. Flexibility and engagement. These are two pillars in all the things that you would think for, because you're not delivering in service level, you're delivering an experience level, right? Every plan should have it. Today, when I work with different workforce planners today, the first question I work with them is like, well, that's great. You've got the numbers. What's the flexibility options? What are you going to entice your workforce with? How are you going to engage with them? That's another key parameter that you need to think about. Volatility. I don't think it's going to get any smaller. It's going to probably get even bigger. Not just because of the pandemic and the other stuff, but because the expectations that's placed on us. We spoke about this in the first part of the presentation, the kind of engagement enterprises are having with their customers. It's going to make it more difficult for us to predict, right? And so there's going to be a lot of volatility. So the idea is adapt and adapt as you go and try and adapt more at real time. So your real-time capabilities and engagement with your workforce is a key, right? It is never wrong to over-communicate in our line of business. Over-communicate and measure engagement as you go and do it all in one platform. Don't rely on another coaching. Don't rely on another performance management. They're all one platform for you, and that's more important. So your workforce stays engaged in the channel that they would like to be engaged. I know I spoke a lot and there was a lot of preaching, so I apologize, but this is some of the trends that we see across Asia Pacific, okay? So just to summarize, two things. We're moving from service levels to experience levels. The two key parameters that you need to think about is enterprises trying to engage differently. So does your platform have capabilities to support this kind of an engagement? And the enterprises engaging with their workforce differently, and does your platform have the right capabilities to do that? And both of them should come together to build your workforce strategy. And do you have the right workforce strategy for the future? That's what you need to think about. That is all from me. I'm happy to take any questions that you may want to. You can drop in the chat, or you can keep asking them in the question and Q&A time that we have at the end of the session.
Thanks, Mark, for highly insightful keynote. In fact, we have learned a lot as far as the strategy and the WFM tech, and also the day-to-day activities, kind of challenges, and also kind of solutions. It's a fantastic. I'm sure that everyone have benefited in this presentation, and we'll make this presentation available to all the attendees. And now is a question. Hi, all attendees. If you have any questions, feel free to put it up there in the chat box, or anyone would like to raise your hand. You can have a two-way conversation with Mark.
All right, either they're too shy or I was too clear. Both are good.
Mark, and WhatsApp, I got one question in the group. What's that NICE is planning to do for the next generation WFM? In fact, you spoke concisely, and what do you think that WFM is going to be? What is the future of WFM? Is it something where when automation is coming into place, or the WFM folks are going to lose a job, or they're going to be creating more jobs? Or what do you think that WFM folks should do differently in the coming years? I'm just thinking of next couple of years, that what is the future of WFM, and what is it they should do differently? And also, if you could, there's a second question. What is the preparedness for 2022?
Well, I'll take the second one first. It's
Yeah.
relatively easy, right? I mean, with the kind of movement of people between different companies, and with the kind of an agile workforce scenario, and and the kind of restrictions that we see, I would consider the 2021 scenario flowing into 2022 a lot. So our plans have to be really agile and adaptable. So in 2022, we have to deal with three things. One, there is definitely a shift into more digital channels from the traditional channels, right? And when I spoke about digital, I'm not just talking about chats and emails, talking about messaging, I'm talking about social, right? I'm talking about quite a few other things, right? So there is a huge volume shift that will continue to happen, because one way or other, we are forcing the entire consumer to adapt to these kind of stuff, right? Because of non-availability of human interactions. So the shift will continue and the acceleration will continue. So your plans for these channels, your plans to understand these things will continue, right? So 2022 will see the migration more coming into this side of the world, and you probably have to be ready to. That's one key area with 2022. And the second 2020 part of 2022 is to make sure that you get the latest tech for you. Because we used to have like 3 or 4, 5 forecasting algorithms like 3 years, 4 years back, right? And we used to rely on the one that fits a lot and which fits into our curve a lot. But as you go on to 2022, simulations are the key in workforce management, right? Make sure you've got the right tool where you can simulate quite a different kind of possibilities and adapt really, really quickly. That's going to be the change in 2022. As things move on, the world goes to lockdown, comes back, lockdown, comes back, right? I'm hoping it's not the case for all of us. I really, really hope it's not the case. It's a bit frustrating for all of us to go through it, but I don't see that like quickly changing in the next 3 or 6 months. So for a planner like us, or for an engagement person like our job, you just have to have the right technology to keep simulating different variations and going behind it. Yeah, so those are the 2 important things, probably 2 or 3 important things for us to think in 2022. Focus on agility and make sure that you've got the right way to simulate your variances as you move on. And the first part is expect a lot of traffic to move into alternate channels and just be ready to handle that in 2022. The long-term question is a bit tricky. I don't think WFM practitioners are going to lose jobs. I mean, it's a very rare niche capability, and it has probably become more important than any that I've ever seen. Usually even at the executive levels, when I meet them about workforce planning, like 3 years, 4 years before, they always used to say, "Oh yeah, there's a lot of numbers there. Yeah, it's a cost, right? And it's a cost. And how can we reduce cost?" This is the conversation I always used to hear. Okay, but that's changed a lot now. Now, when I speak to executives, the role of WFM is completely changed. They're looking at, well, how can we engage better, right? How can we get the right workforce planned and available and engaged better? And these guys are no more number crunchers for me. They're the guys who are going to make sure that I've got the right people engaged at the right time. So I think the workforce planning will shift into more engagement levels, and and it's not going to be just to manage people. It's going to manage all channels, people, bots, any other channels that you can think of. And our deliverables would not be just productivity. Our deliverables would be experience. And the job market will continue to grow, and it'll get more complex. The tools will get more complex, but the people who have entered into this earlier will reap the benefits of it, because the fundamentals of workforce will never change. It's going to exist.
Thanks, Mark. Mark, we have 2 questions from the audience. One is, you could also read through that. One of the challenges with XLA is that can be subjective. What action would you suggest to minimize this for the company that will be moving from SLA to XLA?
It's a really, really good question. And we've been struggling with this with quite a few of even our customers and partners. How do you define an experience, right? And how long is an experience? These are 2 important questions that we struggle with. How do you define an experience? In some areas, it's easy. Some companies consider a spend or a purchase, okay, or an issue resolution as an experience, right? It's easier. Some people still consider effort as experience. If they didn't have to traverse through multiple channels, if they get it done, these things done in one way or other the fastest way, then they consider that as experience. So my advice if you're moving to XLA, my advice is to get this definition right, to start with some simple definitions, right? Again, we don't have to steadfastly hold experiences into numbers first. We'll have to define what a right experience is, and then you can go into nitty-gritty. So it is a bit challenging. It's a journey, but a good definition, a good simple definition of an experience is a good place to start. And then you will start measuring, the nuances of it, and then you would know how to convert that into numbers and make tangible impact as you go on. It's a hard one, but there is no shortcuts there, pal. You'll have to go through it step by step. So that's the measurement of experience. The second is the time period of the experience, right? Today, what do you call as a good experience? Does it sustain? And this is one of the things I spoke about in the presentation. Well, you might have delivered an amazing experience for a transaction or for a need that the customer came to you for, in whichever channels, whether he came to you in Google, where you met him in the Google, or whether you decided to meet him in the voice channel. It doesn't matter, right? But then how long did the experience sustain? Did you promise something that you never delivered? Or you delivered something that couldn't sustain the original promise that you gave them? That's a different story. And there are ways today where we go back proactively to consumers and check them directly or indirectly whether the experience continues. And that's another important part in XLA. It's not delivering a short-term, but a long-term experience. Two separate scenarios. It's hard, but takes time, but we can obviously get it right. And you can always drop a note to any one of us from NICE, and we'll be happy to share our experiences with you.
There's one last question. Probably we could take it up at the last, or probably if you like to answer it now. What's for a COMO platforms to expect in 2022, and what should be the focus? What should be our focus?
So, Mithul, I think in this case, the COMO abbreviation is killing me. I'm not so clear on it, but I believe it's collaborative platforms that you're looking for. Is that right? Or can you just give a thumbs up, thumbs down to me on the chat?
This is Mithul Raj. If you could raise your hand, I can unmute you. Would you like to ask a question to Mark now? Yeah, he's saying that in content moderation.
Oh, content moderation platforms. You should expect a lot in 2022 around it. We are seeing scenarios where, again, workforce is our productivity is defined by content and moderation platforms. So, for example, let me give you a short example. Today, when you have a problem with your vacuum cleaners, right, or your hand phones, one of the key areas that what we are looking at is not to call the company. Right? When we forecast, we say, okay, this is the amount of repairs we expect, and so these many companies that would call. But basically, we don't expect the people who are going into Google to call us. Most of us today, when we have a problem with an electronic appliance, we just quickly go to Google and search. And we might end up in a forum, or we might end up in somewhere else, and then we might solve, we might not solve, which will trigger multiple interactions there. Now, imagine if you are an appliance company, and if somebody is going and Googling about you, you're able to meet them at the digital doorstep, really, really smart, right? And provide them with the right information or the right stuff, and managing content with them, making sure that they receive the right content, etc., in front of them, then it's problem half solved. And then you have a better way of bringing them into any of our channels in a much more structured, organized way, and where you can plan workforce in a better way. So to me, it has a larger pull in the digital world, and it actually has more applications in 2022 as we come from, as customers go more digital, bringing the right content in front of them, guiding them to the right content, and getting them into the right channel after the content plays a key role. Maybe I've got your question right, or maybe I've got it completely wrong, but this is what I could have understood. But if you need more details, or if I'm off the track, just give me a chat. After we start the next presentation, I'll understand the intent better. Then I can answer you better. But my first view on that is what I just gave you.
Thanks, Mark. Mithul, I'll share Mark's contacts with you. Probably you could interact with Mark. And also, we're going to have the question and answer series at the end. Please stay back, and we could have the answers from multiple speakers with their perspective. All right. Thanks, Mark, for a very detailed presentation. It's been very insightful. Thank you so much for your sharing.
Over to you, Shiva. Thanks.
Thank you. Divya Srividya.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mark. It was truly wonderful listening to you. We now have our next speaker, which is Nadia. She has over 2 decades of experience in the WFM industry. From a humble beginning as an agent in a contact center, she progressed into workforce planning as a WFM practitioner for Insurance Australia Group, American Express Business Travel, Virgin Mobile, and Hello World. She also has an extensive vendor experience, having worked with various vendors as a WFM trainer and consultant, technical support, and now as a workforce optimization APAC product owner at NICE for Asia Pacific. Every time I listen to Nadia, it's something new that she has to say. So I look forward to hearing to her. Please join me in welcoming Nadia.
Hey, thank you. Okay, so thank you everybody for joining from right around the region. It's great to see so many registrations. We're really happy to have you here. A little bit about today, I'm working off a smaller laptop, so I can't quite see the chat. So to the moderators, if there's questions, please call them out to me and I can pause at any point and answer your questions. We're going to look at some of the technology that can power some of the strategies that Mark has mentioned earlier on in the session. Some of the cool new things that NICE has in its kit bag that can help you reimagine your workforce management practice. So this slide I have up at the beginning of a lot of my presentations, and anyone who's probably sat in on a few may have seen this before, but I think it's a really important slide because it can help you to identify where you sort of sit on this spectrum when it comes to workforce management, not just from the technology, but also from your workforce planning practice and where you want to get to, right? So if we look at the leading space, I'm going to talk about some contributors to help you get there. This is where we have organizations with an omni-channel contact center. We have a nice integration, seamlessly delivering all these different interactions to the employee, emails, chats, messagings, and so on. They're in the cloud. We're going to talk about cloud in a little more detail in the roundtable, but one thing that stands out to me during the COVID pandemic is that the folks who are on cloud had the ability to do a lot more in a lot more rapid time. Okay, they're far better placed to cope with these massive peaks, than the premise. We're talking about software that's infused with analytics, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, and that we've automated the low value tasks. We're going to pick on that a little bit today. But for me, the most important thing is that fourth point down is that you have elevated the workforce planning practice to becoming trusted advisors. You are guiding strategic business decisions. We don't just mark people as sick and trade some shifts and put in some breaks, right? We're beyond that. That's important, but we're going to automate as much of that as we can so we can turn into strategic partners to the operation. What if this happened? What if that happened? What if COVID outbreak here or there, or this site closed, or we open a new channel? That's where I want to get us to be. Operating space, I'll pick on that a little bit. This is where we're still forecasting for voice only, even though I can bet you that's not the only channel in your organization. Everything's manual. So I still speak to customers out there who are using Excel spreadsheets, and not small ones. Some of them have, I spoke to one last week that had 400 seats, all run by Excel spreadsheets, okay? When we talk about being an employer of choice, being able to differentiate yourself, this is where you need to be able to position yourself as someone who can offer these great self-service tools, web-based schedule platforms and mobile apps and things like that. But you're not adding a lot of value to the business when you're in the operating space. If you happen to not be there anymore, people will probably just tick along okay. And we've seen over the past 18 months that WFM, when it's performed in a way that I guess, it kind of should be, this is where a lot of the return is coming from, a lot of the value add is coming from that part of the, from that function, because they're able to take a scenario strategic based approach to workforce planning. So you might find pockets of your business or yourself is all over the place here. But the overall strategy and the vision that you have is to sort of get up into that leading space. And we're going to look at some of the cool things to help drive that. So digital channel management. So I've been in workforce planning for a long time. And as was mentioned in the intro, my first role was as an agent. And a lot of us have come from that space. But my job literally does not exist anymore. My first contact center job, I was a directory assistant, and people would ring me up and they would say, what's the phone number for the Commonwealth Bank in Randwick? What's the phone number for the Sydney Opera House, right? And you would just look up phone numbers all day long and then connect people to their phone number hundreds and hundreds of times a day. That job literally is gone, because you can do that on your mobile device, or you could find out through a chat or a message or something else. So the way that people interact with the contact center has probably been the biggest shift that I've ever seen during my time in WFM. And it's the one that people are still grappling to manage. So according to this benchmark survey, 2020 saw an increase in digital interactions. What percentage do you think experienced an increase? And I haven't got this as a poll, but you can take a stab. I think we'd all probably agree it's the highest number on there, and it's 62%. So we have this seismic shift towards digital. We're expecting a massive influx of it if it's not already there. So Mark had this slide up in his keynote, and I've got it back in here again because we're going to take a look at it from like, how do we solve this problem now, right? So if you have this type of very blended work going on in your organization, how do you equip yourself with the right mathematics and the approach to understand the nuances of each of these work items and the unique attributes that each one possess? So if you think back to like 1990 something, multi-skilling became a thing, right? We had these ACDs that could now support multi-skill routing, and the WFMs had to be configured to understand that people's time is utilized across multiple pieces of work. And the way that it gets utilized can be unique and varied per employee based on their proficiency. It can be unique based on incoming demand and estimated wait times and all of those things. That needs to happen for this, right? That type of mathematical approach needs to be baked into your WFM to solve for this. So we have an email coming in, somebody's chatting backwards and forwards, then they're out of focus, so they stopped chatting for a little while. Okay, so we've kind of got simultaneous work items going on. We've got a message that came in, and there's a timeline at the bottom. It might be a bit hard to see from day one, and then it didn't get, okay, went out and the customer didn't reply to the next day. Okay, so it's been pending overnight, really. We've got tasks that now wouldn't have occurred if it didn't elevate from somewhere. And we've got people who are dedicated for a period of time on a particular task. In this case, it's Facebook. And then they're out of focus for a while from the chat. How do you know what is the required staff when people are blended like this? We've got different service level objectives. We've got work items barging in over the top of work items. We've got escalations. We've got very, very long response times. This is not just first available person in 20 seconds, right? These people aren't even taking calls, but they're productive members of the enterprise. And so the WFM needs to now solve for this. Not only multi-skill, we've had that, we are leaders in multi-skilling. Now multi-session needs to come in, as well as all of these associated parameters, things like concurrency and interruptibility. So a lot of solutions have fallen short. Yep, they're too hard to configure. It doesn't understand the asynchronous nature of certain work items. It's limited. And so it creates a gap where it's very intensive or overly simplistic. It just isn't quite enabled to solve for this complex problem. But we've got you back. So nice WFM, we have poured a lot of development and spent a lot of time rewriting literally the WFM to enable our customers to be able to now solve for that complex digital landscape that they find themselves in. So now with digital 2.0, we can model for in-focus, AHT, or elapsed. We can set up channels The channels can have different interruptibility profiles, like a call can barge into an email, but a chat would override an email, something like that. We can have channel and employee specific concurrency. You can model concurrency by onboarding, for example. My new hires aren't so proficient, but they will be after 4 weeks, and then they'll be even more so after 8 weeks. And we've rewritten the maths now. So people who are familiar with NICE will know that you can model for a certain multi-skill efficiency factor. We can now do multi-skill, multi-session efficiency. So we are, and Mark in the keynote spoke to where this is even going beyond here. We'll be doing things like that cognitive load. What is the right load and mix of channels to give someone to ensure that experience outcome that we're trying to achieve? So we're very excited about this. It is available now for our cloud customers. And we really think that, we're already in the market leading position for our WFM. We've been there for a long time. We're very proud of it. And this is the kind of innovation that will keep us in the upper right-hand side of the quadrant. Just pushing on, one of my favorite capabilities is this forecasting with AI. The reason I love this is because it makes us as workforce planners look very smart, very easily. Right? There's not a lot you have to do as the forecaster here to get it to this modeling point. Mark spoke about the art and the science of forecasting. This is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting and get us into a better place that we can apply a little bit of art over the top, right? So as Mark mentioned earlier, the algorithm typically deployed by most WFM is some variant of a weighted moving average, right? Look at the last X number of weeks. This week's more important, this week's less, and there you have your forecast, right? We still provide that, but we also provide a bunch of new algorithms behind these three models, Box Jenkins, the exponentially smooth, you see all the variations there, and the multilinear seasonal regression. What I found when it comes to forecasting is that people are doing this. We've got, for example, a big customer in India who does this already, or a prospect rather, but they're doing it they have to take it out of their current WFM and put it into Excel. And then they model it the way they want, and then they put it back in. So we're trying to close that gap by giving the forecasters a far more advanced approach, right? I just know there's going to be times where you want to put it in Excel. Of course, you can export to Excel and do what you want, but we're giving a lot more out of the box capability so you can easily model all these different approaches. So how does it make it look smart? It has a best pick capability. So when you choose best pick, what happens is the WFM itself is on a continuous improvement loop, and it goes back and analyzes your historical data, and it tests out all these different models until it finds the one that has the lowest minimum the MAPE, as they call it. What I'm saying is the one that's going to produce the most accurate forecast for you, and it will select that. And you can have a whole host of different lines of business within one generation, and it will go and test this out for each. We call them contact type, but for each line of business. So this is all fully documented. I can share, there's white papers. We partnered with the 4Dummies folks to create a little ebook about which different model works best under which conditions. Do you have a lot of data? Not so much. Is it spiky? Is it cyclical? But again, you can just simply choose best pick, and the robots will go and test all the simulations out for you and produce a forecast using its selected approach. So we all know the benefits of having a more accurate forecast, right? This is the bedrock of everything that we do. And in today's, crazy world, it's never been so important, right? So I won't go on about the operational impacts of having a more accurate forecast. The most beautiful thing about this is this one on the right-hand side. It's adaptive to changing data patterns because it's AI based. It doesn't pick and stick. And if you think about yourself generating a forecast, or if you ever watch somebody generating a forecast, it's typically the same thing sort of each time. They pick it a couple of weeks. They might do a little bit of difference with the weighting, but the maths is the same. So the way that you're analyzing the data is exactly the same mathematical approach every time. And that may be oversimplistic. It might not count enough for seasonality or cyclical behavior. So this adapts. It goes back and retests every time, and it relearns every time. And that's beautiful for us, because for us as humans to go and run all those simulations over every piece of work that you have in your organization, we just don't have time. And you just be sitting there running simulations forever. So it adapts, it learns, it makes you look smart, and it's available to our customers today. We're seeing great improvements from people who have adopted this approach, because they're able to stop taking a one-size-fits-all and use a different array to get to that most accurate forecast. And just to wrap, another piece of kit that we have that I just love, right? So if you think back to the earlier part of the slide, we spoke about self-service and automation and adding value as WFM people. Intraday management, right, is one of the most core functions of WFM. It's important, and I'm not here to say that it's not important, but what I'm here to say is that it doesn't add overall value to the organization. So if I'm constantly putting out a fire at 3 o'clock, at 3:15, at 3:30, what am I doing? I'm putting a band-aid over a problem, and then I put another band-aid over it, and then I put another band-aid over it, right? Now, that act of doing that consumes a lot of time. Where are we understaffed? Who could work that? Do you want overtime? Yes, no, I'll pay you back here, I'll pay you back there. Now I need another break, all of that stuff. It's a lot of time and it's heavy. But it's not guiding the business in any way. It's just making the service level a little bit better at certain intervals. So what if we could get rid of it? Yep. What if we had an automated approach to service level optimization? What could that look like for you? What could you do with all the free time? You know, people laugh, what are you going to do with all your free time? This is exactly that. Because we have that solution. We've got about 65 customers doing this today, including in Australia, and through the APAC region, we've got some big customers where they are setting these rules engines up to automatically monitor the service level and hunt for any deviations, or where it detects that it's not a balanced net staffing based on your own business rules, right? What is your tolerance for over or understaffing for a certain piece of work? Then it automatically takes action when those thresholds are triggered. It knows which employees within your organization can address the problem. So if you've ever looked at a workforce management schedule and you see you're understaffed, oh, who can do that? You got to walk around. Can you take this call? Can we change your skills? You know, oh no, I don't do that. It's tiresome, right? It knows all of that because it's built in. And it just does not stop. This is like the Terminator of intraday management. It just keeps trying to solve the problem until the condition is actually resolved. Okay, so it's integrated to WFM. It's rules-based. So WFM time horizon is, you know, can come out from months. You could have even had years, right? All the way down to minutes. So some months ago, the schedule was created. Typically, most people are on like a 6 to 8 week thing. And then as it gets closer and closer to the time, more changes are happening to the schedule. Now we've added this, now we've added that. Now people have called in sick, all the way down to the minute level, right? So there's a lot of manual intraday processes that happen around this intraday management component. People who want to make changes themselves. Oh, could I just change my break from here to here? Where we want to make changes, I'd like to add some overtime to your schedule. If there's an unexpected event, oh my goodness, there's been a spike, no more team meeting for you guys. Plus monitoring adherence, plus monitoring KPIs. So it's consuming a lot of our time, right? But not solving the big ticket questions. It's just making things better for those few intervals. And this is the, you know, where we want to outsource it to the robots, right? So the solution that we have for the schedule changes is that the agent or the planner can initiate change either through a web portal or mobile app in less than a minute. They can move their own schedule. They can self-serve. I'm going to come in late today and make up the hours on Thursday. All of that stuff can be done via the mobile app, right? It's great. And as soon as that happens, based on your business rules, it's approved and the schedule is automatically updated. Agent doesn't even need to speak to anybody. Right. And the admin initiated changes, same thing. It's all happening automatic, can happen through the mobile app. and self-service. So the agent experience and what offered opportunities they will see is tailored to their skill profile. So I might log in and see that there's additional hours because I'm an employee who could contribute. Somebody else will get a different set of priorities and opportunities, all based by administrative control and rules-based. Adherence monitoring. We can do this through the EEM platform, through our WFM automation platform as well. You're out of adherence again. You've been out of adherence 3 weeks. These are the sort of notifications and feedbacks that we can actually send. So we're able to save a lot of time in the reduction of manually advising people of these breaches in adherence. Okay. And also, lastly, the KPI, as Mark has showed some screen grabs earlier on, really is about creating a sense of engagement and communication with the employee. The employees themselves as well can tailor the type of interaction they receive from the platform, such as nominate things like do not disturb me after certain hours, or only send me shift opportunities between my preferred hours. So they have a sense of control over it, and we're not blurring those work from home boundaries as well. So that concludes my section on technology. So we looked at a WFM that was truly capable of modeling for complex digital channel landscapes. We looked at boosting your forecasting accuracy using the nice artificial intelligence-based forecasting approach, and also automating your intraday, letting the robots do the heavy lifting for those filling those staffing gaps, while we spend more time solving big ticket problems like, you know, what channel mix is right for the organization and where should people be working, and all of those great strategic things that really drive value and have you elevated up into that leading space of WFM. Thank you. I'm just going to stop sharing. If I can find the stop sharing, it's gone over here. If there's anyone who wants to ask a question though, feel free before we go on to the next part of the session.
Hi guys, now's the time to ask questions. Feel free to ask any questions to Nadia. Nadia, your presentation has been fantabulous. In fact, we liked about the artificial intelligence in forecasting, just something that really industry has really embraced this, and very, very important aspects of it as well as WFM tech.
Yeah, look, it is. So we're seeing more like this data scientist element, right? Where literally some organizations have teams of data scientists running different approaches over their forecasts and coming up with different models. So what this does, particularly for, you know, the medium business, it really makes that scientific and sophisticated approach accessible to everyone. You don't need to be a data scientist, and you don't need to go and hire additional people to model out in a more complex way than ever before. You just push a button in the WFM and it will do it. And so from that perspective, when I say it makes us look smart, it really does. And also, we don't expect for WFM people to have done, you know, advanced mathematics courses, and they're balancing a lot of balls already in the air. And so again, it's very accessible, very easy, but very sophisticated. So yeah, we're excited about it, and we love talking to customers about this one.
That's very interesting. And are there any live cases, or in applying the AI forecasting? And what has been the experience? And I saw a few of the data points that you shared, and this is going to be future of WFM tech, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We see it as part of the future, and we're certainly excited to bring it to market. As I mentioned, it's a very hot sort of topic where people are looking at specialist roles to fill those gaps. And what we're saying to the market is, we've done that heavy lifting for you. We've put that into the the innovation has gone into the product, so you don't need to necessarily hire those sorts of folks. We can provide it to you, in our WFM.
Absolutely. And Nadia, what we would do is, while we're going to have a question and answer session during the panel discussion, and at the end, what we'll do is I'll just take this opportunity to have this video played, And please stay back. And right after this, we will jump into the round table. And dear audience, feel free to ask your questions in the chat box. And we're going to have very exciting session now in next few minutes. Before that, let's take a look at the WFM trends. This is a small video. You'll get to see what is the new trend in WFM. Thank you. Thank you, Nice, for crafting this WFM trends. It has been a great show and great learning in this process. All right, now next we'll move on to the exciting part of the event, that is roundtable. Thank you, Nadia, for your insightful presentation. We'll move on to the next series of event, is roundtable. To do this roundtable, we have Jim. Jim doesn't need introduction in an ASEAN market. Srividya, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Good. Go ahead.
Mark, Nadia, and Jim, just the three of them have over 6 decades of experience and knowledge that they're here to share. So think of it when we have a panel of experienced and expert speakers along with Jim. Jim has over 24 years of experience, 19 years of which is in contact center management in the field of workforce management, operations, and project management. He is known as a workforce management professional, a business transformation strategist, and he is an expert in business analytics and delivery management. He currently heads the workforce management digital operations and is head of digital operations at Cognizant Technology Solutions. He's been here for the last 7 years. Prior to that, he was in the senior leadership in WFM and senior consultant at IBM. Few other companies that he has been associated of repute are American Express India Private Limited, Combat Advertising, SG Computers and Communications, and Morbid, to name a few. Please join me in welcoming Jim. Jim, over to you.
Hi everyone. This is Jim, and thanks for the introduction. Just a small correction in the introduction is that I'm no longer with Cognizant. I've joined. I'm part of Accenture now. Just joined recently, so I'm working with them. I just want to take a moment to probably bring some context to the roundtable that we're going to start off. So I mean. It's in early 2020s when the world sort of turned upside down for us. I still remember it was probably December 2019, January 2020, when every day we were reading about how things are changing in China, and how things are getting locked down, and we were just hoping everything does come under control pretty soon. But that didn't really happen, and little did I know that, soon the whole world would be engulfed in the same chaos, and, we would all be picking up our machines and, heading homes and to start our work from home thereafter. So that's where we are. Now it's been almost like 2 years, almost close to 2 years now that, people are sitting at home, probably once a week, or, for some of you, who probably cannot work totally from home, might be going to office, with a lot of restrictions, wearing a face mask, face shields in some places, and things like that. But for most of the people, people are still working from home, sitting at their home and doing their regular work. And while we have adopted all these the new setup and working from home, I'm not sure if this is still something that we can call the new normal. So yeah, so that's what is what we are going to try and explore in this discussion. So as things are still happening, today we have some of the smartest brains in the industry that we have over here. And it's an opportunity for me, along with everyone else who's part of this webinar, to learn and understand from them about their experience during this period. Where do they think that we are heading towards in the coming days? What are some of the, if I may put a positive spin to it, what are some of the positives that they saw that happened during this period, as well as let's talk about what were the challenges that happened during this period as well. How the relationship between a client, a customer, an employer, and employee within our context has changed or evolved during this period. What are some of the newer skill sets that have emerged for people these days? What should we be looking at, and what has become irrelevant for that matter, if there is anything like that? And how do the traditional KPIs that we have been looking at, do they matter? What are some of the new KPIs? Mark did mention from a transition from SLA to XLA. So what are some of those KPIs that we should be looking at, or what are some of the KPIs that the team would talk about, that they are focusing on? So we'll talk about them. And of course, uh, last but not the least, we'll talk about some of the technologies and the solutions that are there, that have actually come into the market, and during this period, specifically during this period, to enable the work to happen and seamlessly without any challenges, although things have changed so much. Also, we'll talk about what should we look at from the future perspective in terms of solutions that should happen. So that's some of the topics that we're going to talk about. And without probably taking up too much of your time, let me sort of bring the panelist. But here's what I would request the panelists to do is that of course, do an introduction for themselves, so that we can know what all you bring to the table, but also mention something like something new that you have learned or adopted during this last 2 years, during the pandemic, something that probably brought in some change to your regular testing. It doesn't have to be work related or a skill that you've learned from a LinkedIn or Udemy or somewhere else, but something that you've just started doing, something to give you a more balanced uh, uh, balanced life for yourself, for that matter. So let me share an example from my perspective. I think few things that I did during this thing is, while initially it was cooking, of course, everyone tries to do, and some of you master it. But for me, it didn't work out actually. I couldn't really eat what I cooked, so I left it there. So what I picked up is something like there's this new concept on numbered paintings. You get these big canvas sheets which has got numbers mentioned on it, and you get these paint colors that come with it, which has the corresponding numbers. So you just have to paint those numbers over. It's a time-taking activity. You have to be patient, very patient, but it's a very relaxing activity. And at the end of the whole activity, when the actual portrait or the painting comes out, it's very rewarding for that matter. So that's something that I've started doing, and it is very helpful. So similarly, I guess some of you must have picked up something that you would like to talk about. So I would request you to please tell us about it, so that we can also get inspired by that. Thank you. Vidya, if you could please bring in the panelists one by one.
Yeah. Hi, this is Dr. Shiva here. Welcome all the esteemed panelists who are very seasoned speakers and also carry more than 2 decades of experience. They've been thought leaders and experts in WFM. We invite Francia. Francia is a seasoned executive leader and head of contact center at Manu Life. Great to have you, Francia, with us.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited to be part of today's WFM Summit. My name is Francia Salas, based in Manila, Philippines, and I am the head of the contact center for Manulife Business Process Solutions. And I've been supporting contact center operations for more than 20 years. So something new I learned or adopted during pandemic. I'll start first with investing on myself. So primarily to focus on improving my physical, mental, and financial state during pandemic. I was able to attend a lot of online yoga sessions and online training courses during pandemic. And lastly, the practice of gratitude. By giving thanks makes us happier, improves physical health and mental well-being, and even reduces stress. So I encourage everyone to practice this more. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Francia. Oliver, great to have you with us.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Olivier, maybe a little bit new to the region. I'm just 3 years based in Singapore and working with all our customers across the ASEAN region, and also across some strategic accounts, which are mostly large companies spread across multiple regions in Asia. Been maybe more than 20 years in Asia, Japan, live in Japan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So thank you for all these years actually in the contact center. So very familiar with some of our customers. So I mean, as you say, the pandemic has been, maybe in the beginning we thought, oh, it's really nice, I can work from home. Who would not be happy to earn the same salary and working from home? So the beginning was, kind of a good start. And I think we had to learn to be, and then suddenly all these requests from all these people around the world. If it's some customer coming from the US asking to have a call in the morning where we are based in Singapore, or call very late at night, and after it we had to find how to make like the balance. Sometimes you have to say no, but you have to be flexible in your work. It's not anymore a 9 to 5. It's like you have to plan your activity, and sometimes you can take a break of 2 hours in the middle of the day, just as long as you can, meet your objectives in your KPI. So I think also many good things that happened was, of course, the ability to have, to do a lot of sports, family time, and as you say, join new training. So I think there's still been try to get the best of the situation. Now, of course, I'd like to go back a little to work and to the office, but overall, I think it was a good experience for these new challenges and to live with the new constraints and the new opportunities.
Thank you, Oliver. That's been very nice introduction and very good thing to share to start with. Thank you. So now we have Nairi joined in from Australia. Nairi, good to have you with us. Nairi Johnson.
Hello, thank you for inviting me. It's really nice to be here. So I have about 12 years experience in workforce planning, starting as a contact centre frontline agent as well as many of you have as well. I work for Energy Queensland in Queensland, Australia, and we are an electricity distributor across the state of Queensland. And we have multiple channels that we work with, ranging from social media, as Nadia went through before. We've got social media, emails, we've got work being pushed to agents through portals, phone calls, multiple channels, which is always fun to juggle and get the balance right and work with the different service level expectations, especially in a regulated environment. With the pandemic, I really discovered my love of writing, which was amazing. I started by writing articles in magazines, and then later did co-authored a book. My second one is due out in February next year. I'm also a columnist for a newspaper here in central Queensland as well. The pandemic really fired that up within me and gave me the opportunity to really hone my communication style. So, I was also able to create a bit of an article or a blog, for want of a better word, describing what workforce planning and analytics is, because it's a widely misunderstood role and responsibility in Australia in particular. So I'm looking forward to sharing that article with my colleagues after this summit at Energy Queensland. It's a very, very small team of just me for the distribution business of Energy Queensland.
That's great to know about you, Nairi. Looking forward to reading those articles and publications that you have published. Thank you. Thanks for being there with us to share your thoughts and experiences. Thank you. Now we have Edita Major. Great to have you, Edita, with us. In fact, I know that busy schedule that you're going through has been very hectic. Great to have you with us to share your insights and experiences.
Thank you. It is my pleasure, and I'm so happy that I've been invited here along with the other very experienced panelists. It's my honor. Again, my name is Editha, and I'm the director of WFM for APAC region at TELUS International. So I've been with WFM for 17 years, mostly with WFM is my experience. And during these times, I have gained more time reading books, which during most of the time I've been working, it became less that time that I spent reading books. So now I've been able to do that more. And I think learning how to similar to what my colleague said a while ago, self-care and new ways to being creative, how to spend your day with your family. Because I know before the pandemic, we're always like, I want to spend more time with my family. But now that we really get to spend more time with our families, things kind of change. So we're all at home, and sometimes it gets boring. So you need to kind of think of new ways to spend the day and be about it and still have fun. So that's what I've been doing.
Great, Edita. Thank you. Thank you for having you, with us. It's really great, and looking forward to hearing you. And again, Nadia, welcome back to have your insights along with other esteemed panelists. So
No
now,
problem.
great. So now we're going to change the view to have a typical panel discussion mode. Then I had Nadia over here. Yeah, wonderful. I think Jim may have got all the set of.
It's like you're a puppet master. You just placed each of us, where you wanted us to sit. So it's an interesting view to see. Hey, yeah, I mean, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever part of the world you guys are in right now. So it's a pleasure and an honor to be with you guys and talk to you this today. So I guess just so that we already set the context. We spoke about what how things are. So I'll start off immediately with topics that we would like to discuss, and probably we can start with Editha, who just joined in. So Editha, I have a question for you. So we have been in the pandemic for almost like 2 years now, and we've seen that COVID-19 has been like a catalyst to reinvent the future. Maybe we never, anticipated how things would be. But can you sort of think of some of the positive changes that has taken place during this piece? In your experience, what could those be? And if you could share that with us, that would be, helpful.
Yeah, so I think there's what we can derive from your solo experience that is not even over yet. But one of the flexible and being nimble is a differentiator, and I organizations who are able to adapt. They're the ones that are able to move forward faster and continue on and sustain business. So I think one of the good things it's been able to do is it kind of really forced us to reimagine how we do our jobs, how we collaborate. I think it's true for any global crisis. It brings out the good and bad. It exposes our vulnerabilities. It forces us to be creative, and it kind of forced us to live in an expedited, not so distant the future. I think is what it's enabled us to do. We kind of had to move quickly and think of ways. How do we do this? How do we move much of our workforce to working remotely? So I think that's something for us to learn from also, because we don't know. I'm not saying pandemic, but we don't know when the next big global event could happen and force us to revolutionize the way we think about how we work and how we do things.
Hey, thanks for that response. So yeah, I agree. So I guess if not for the pandemic, probably would still be doing this working from office. Of course, there would be changes in terms of solution technology, but the whole thing of how suddenly and quickly the industry adopted based on the pandemic in terms of getting into this work from home models, hybrid models. I think that itself is happened because of the pandemic, because otherwise it would have been very difficult for us to probably speak to a client, make them understand what makes sense, also from an employee perspective in terms of how I'm sure before the pandemic there would be a lot of employees who would sort of wanted that flexibility to be able to work from home, work from office, and so on. And that itself would have been a employee sat mechanism from an organization perspective, but without this pandemic probably that wouldn't have been possible. So I agree. I guess those kind of changes have brought in those things. So just from a follow-up, so and probably I'll come to you Francia, for that if there has been these positives that have come out, what are some of the biggest challenges that you saw during this whole pandemic, and probably are still facing because of what's happening. So can you give me contrasting sort of a response from the pandemic perspective?
Sure. For me, it's the readiness of, I can speak for operation, but the operational leaders. If they are equipped and trained to handle the situation, if they can handle a remote or a hybrid teams while maintaining the company or the organizational culture. And to ensure the success of a hybrid team or employees, they need to be trained to maximize their remote or hybrid working tools. So we've seen organization wherein when pandemic started, they're not work at home enabled and took some time to really adapt to that change. Um, we also need to invest in digital learning platforms to make training accessible for all employees, whether they're in office or working at home, and also a complete understanding and clarity of our manager's role supporting a hybrid environment, which I think for me is also very critical. Our managers, they need to manage relationship. They need to ensure pace and quality are not compromised and play a central role in connecting to our people. Aside from investing in digital learning platforms, we also need to invest in our manager training, focusing on skills and delegation, personal resiliency, and leading uncertainty during this time.
Right. Thanks. Thanks. I agree. I mean, some of the areas I personally also feel is, we've actually suffered a lot in the whole employee engagement area because of the pandemic, because that face-to-face connect, those outing. I guess slowly and gradually we are moving towards that, but we were missing out on those team gatherings, team outings that was there, which was not happening. And I guess those are a big motivators and big boosters from an employee morale perspective also, and keeps a good engaged team in place. This other area that that you also mentioned about is the training area, I guess. So while it's easy for a tenured resource to move into and quickly adopt to a work from home or a remote environment, but for a new resource who's onboarded needs a lot of hands-on support, needs a lot of guidance around that. And I guess that's an area where there's a lot of work that has already happened, but I guess that's an area that still I feel and some of the organizations still till now do that they keep the initial training folks in office for a certain period of time of course all maintaining all the social distancing and everything in place, but just putting a resource directly into a remote environment becomes a little challenging. Probably as the future unfolds, we might see that happening more effectively also. So that's something that probably we can look forward to. Thank you, Francia, for that response. So the next question that we have is, I guess, I'll go to Nairi for that. So from this change, this whole change that we're talking about. So from a WFM perspective, what are the changes that we see, at least from our resource perspective? What are some of the skills that are in demand or have evolved during this period? Also, can you talk about certain skills probably that have become irrelevant, or probably it's like by default a requirement, but it's not something that it's the most important or key from that perspective? So from a skill perspective or from a resource perspective, what do you see? People talk about data scientists and all that. So should all WFM resources become data scientists? What are the things that you're looking at?
I don't think so, to be honest, because we do have some pretty amazing systems available to us in the world. Exactly as Nadia explained, yes, there are a lot of workforce planners that still use Excel spreadsheets. I have experienced that in a different role. And then there's some products out there, as long as you have an ability to build a system from the ground up and understand how it works and thinks, you can essentially program the solution, the digital solution, to deliver exactly your models. so that you're able to articulate those to the leadership and management team. One of the things that I noticed quite significantly is the thirst for information from the leadership and management teams, where workforce planning always tends to sit on the sideline to a degree when it comes to the workforce management, and it's the leadership team which manage the people day to day. So I often explain it to people unfamiliar with what it is that I do, that the leadership team look after our people and workforce planning look after the business, and we meet in the middle. When the pandemic happened and everybody was remote and everybody was sitting to the sidelines of each other without that face-to-face contact, I found that I was utilised far more heavily than ever to actually interpret data, to interpret the behaviours of the employees. We did have some employees who could not work from home for various reasons. So we did have social distancing provisions available in the office. But yes, the ability to manipulate data without being a data scientist, but having an understanding of how that all works is quite critical. From a workforce planning perspective, having that exposure to building a workforce on a system rather than an Excel spreadsheet from the ground up is fundamental. I've trained many people over the last 7 years in particular, and there's definitely a missing gap there where I've built the system that we use at the moment. From the insides, obviously, it's a product supplied by a vendor, but it's fundamentally challenging to teach the configuration and the thinking process behind how the system routes work and delivers work and produces an intraday and a forecast and schedules when a person is brand new into the workforce planning role. So that is a challenge at the moment, but one that I definitely embrace, because we need more people exposed to workforce planning. And I honestly believe that the pandemic, in my industry in particular, has enhanced the relationship that workforce planning has with senior leadership and our leadership team in general. There's a far more appreciation for the role and what it actually does. And then coupled with communication, strong communication, and being able to deliver a presentation even and an explanation in layman's language, so that our frontline agents understand that workforce planners aren't people that just sit there telling you when to take breaks and when to turn up at work, which is what my children think that I do for a job, but that we actually play quite a fundamental role in ensuring the business success. So yeah, I think the pandemic's definitely brought that to light for workforce planning, and for that I'm very appreciative of.
Thank you, Neri. Hey, I just on those lines, from your perspective, when there's a solution that is being deployed in any of your clients' environment, what sort of skill sets would you guys be looking at from the resources for that? So there could be resources who are just simply, trained on Excel and things like that. But do you look for anything more when we look at, the users of those systems?
So when I recruit for workforce planners, succession planning opportunities and upskilling into the role and having somebody trained and able to backfill, for example, I'm looking for somebody with confidence and ability to make a decision, somebody who can work autonomously, somebody who does have strong administration skills as well as attention to detail. Using Excel is critical. I'm not going to lie, as you would all know on the panel. It would be a real struggle to have somebody come in with zero Excel skills. So that is definitely a requirement. But I guess from my perspective, I'm looking at what are the transferable skills and the strengths that a workforce planner or a workforce manager or analyst in particular, what are the skills that we need to be able to deliver the work and have it received well, and communication is key as well. one of the things that I quite often spoke to the people that I work with is we can communicate all we want, but comprehension is key. So if you're communicating a message and it's not sinking in, there's a problem there with the person's ability to comprehend, and that's on you to overcome as the workforce planner, to help the business and the leaders and the managers to understand how critical it is and how fundamental it is that you have an efficient workforce that's delivering, the work within service level expectations. And even upskilling the leadership team has been quite a task as well. So sharing that workload, relinquishing the reins a little bit, I guess, to a degree, and just making sure that they're understanding the short-term, medium and long-term impacts of the decisions that they're making as well.
Understood. Okay, thank you, Neri. So I'll come to Nadia for the question on some of the technologies that have during this time, the solutions for that matter, that were heavily requested by or solutioned by some of the key clients. So what are the things that you looked, what you have observed or seen during this last 2 years that have been utilized by some of the teams?
Yeah, definitely. The most prevalent was cloud. Having something that was in the cloud. This really did prompt a lot of customers who needed to quickly spin up contact centers to start thinking about that, because the people who were in the cloud are more easily able to scale. And in the reverse, right, for the folks whose business experienced a significant downturn when they're locked into premise-based solutions with perpetual licensing models, it's difficult for them to say, I don't need 3,000 head count anymore. I want 500 because they're locked in like that. So having something that's in the cloud when it comes to WFM, even though we're WFM practitioners, the way that you consume the technology and the way that it's deployed does have an impact on your ability to be able to move quickly from that sort of perspective without some sort of penalty or without experiencing a degradation in performance because your boxes weren't sized to suddenly support a massive growth of 5,000 agents or whatever. So cloud was a big hot topic. Also, any sort of tool that helps with engagement, with being able to provide an extension of the typical experience that someone would have in the contact center to the home. So in my remit, which is the workforce optimization space, which was the mobile app, but we had experienced same right across the portfolio, looking at different technologies that can, ensure compliance when someone is working from home, ensure that they're engaged when they're working from home. So we saw that right across our product suite. How do we maintain security when people are working from home? So it was really that working from home paradigm. And the most interesting thing that was requested was services, right? Because the WFM doesn't really care where someone sits. You can sit in like Tamworth or Timbuktu. You're still a skilled person doing a thing. But all of a sudden, all these folks who've never really used WFM or thought about why they scheduled that way go, we need to now do flexible schedules and we need to have, split shifts and people working from home. They didn't actually know how to use the tools that they had. And the WFM's always been able to do that for ages. So we saw lots of requests for refresher trainings. We got some big managed services where we had massive customers say to us, actually, nice, could you just do the workforce planning for us? So a really big boost on education around the WFM, like helping people to look at why did you ever set it up in that way in the first place? And if you want to change it, maybe you've never used split shifts before, maybe you've never used shift bidding before and you want to bring that out as part of an engagement tool. So even though the functionality was always there, it was really about best practice. So lots of best practice sessions, lots of workshops, lots of training and education to help them learn to get the most out of the WFM that they had to support this disparate workforce that they now have.
Hey, Thanks, Nadia. So,
No
yeah,
problem.
so I think more often than not, we've always observed. In fact, in my own experience, I've seen that, whenever we deploy any tools or app solution, even after the first set of trainings and all that happens, and almost by 6 months or a year gone, we realize we're
Yeah.
just using 40% of the potential of the tool, and there
Yeah.
are many things that the tool can do which probably we sort of not aware of, because I guess people change, yeah, and when the training is
Yeah.
passed on from one
Correct.
person to other, those kind of things are not passed on appropriately. So I guess it makes perfect sense to utilize the services from that perspective, to get refresher training. And of course,
Yeah.
each time you guys upgrade your solutions, it comes with a bunch of new set of features that can be utilized and figured out through these refresher trainings that happen. So yeah,
Yeah, for sure. We had a lot of requests for custom training engagements where they'll say, we've got a problem that we want to solve, and can I come in and do 3 or 4 days on a particular, it might be redesigning their WFM. It could be, looking at, I don't know, different long-term forecasting, things like that. But definitely a lot of people, and it's kind of amusing because like, it does this already, right? But like they'd never needed to, or actually, like you say, in a lot of cases, basically someone resigns and they say, hey, you press these 6 buttons and you'll get a schedule. And so they've been pressing those 6 buttons for eternity. And now like the 6 buttons don't cut it anymore. You need to know about the other 300 buttons. And so we did see a lot of requests for services and support.
I completely agree. So, I mean, again, sticking on to the subject of technology and solutions, I think what the last year did to us was, through the demand forecasting, the process of forecasting to a completely different level altogether, because the world changed totally. It's not just like probably an APAC market changed, or the US market changed or something like that, or a specific industry got impacted. Everything got impacted, and probably no one had anticipated a change like this to happen. So of course, what that would mean is there would be changes in the wherever the volume or the transaction is originating, there is a change over there. People who are servicing, there would be change over there. So the whole demand planning, or the forecasting and then capacity planning would have gone for it.
Yeah.
So, and
Yeah.
and you spoke about the AI, as a learning tool. But I guess
Yeah.
even AI over here with this kind of a change would have actually faced a lot of problems, because of course not enough data for AI to actually learn and throw it on. So here's a
Yeah.
different question. Tomorrow, okay, say today we are here, and the world is evolving, changing. No one can say if this was the only virus or the first, or then nothing would happen beyond that. So tomorrow, if there is a world changing event of a similar nature that would happen, so what kind of preparation from a solution perspective do we have right now in our setup, in our tools? What have we built, from an AI perspective or something like that? Do you think we can anticipate something and change something this fast and move ahead in a much more smoother way than what we could do this time?
Look, I'm asked this question in some way, shape, or form, probably once a week, from people all over the region. It's in tenders. I'm on calls about it. So we have a situation where the data just isn't there for us in the way that it used to be. And so what the WFM software does is it provides, I did the talk on it, a very sophisticated way to model based on the actual data that you've collected, right? And Mark mentioned about art and science. Now, this tool is smart, and all WFM tools have a forecasting capability. So they're smart, but then they're dumb, right? They only know what's happened, and they can provide more sophisticated models only on what's happened. Now, if what's happened is a global unprecedented pandemic, where does that leave us, right? Now, there's nothing I can say that is a quick win. What needs to happen in this scenario is that the forecaster needs to be able to almost operate in like a BCP mode, where they're constantly testing out different scenarios and they have them ready to go. So if they start seeing a particular, there's a new variant and I'm in the travel industry and now we're blocking flights from South Africa. So South Africa typically represents, 18% of my incoming sales from this. So I need to have that scenario, you know what I mean? That they're ready, but I can't say to them, this is hand on heart, the most accurate forecast, because it's a living and a very dynamic thing. They need to be able to test out different scenarios, have them ready, know the consequences of each one, and be able to pick up one and say, this is the one we're going with. And it means we need to do X, Y, and Z. When the data is not there, it doesn't matter that it's not there. And this is where our own brains come into it. I did a talk for a travel industry prospect that we have. And I spoke to a couple of I've done workforce planning for travel. And I don't know why I seem to be in the travel industry a lot, but I have. And so I spoke to some of my old colleagues about how do they manage. And so one of my mates who's just a pure forecaster, that's all he does, like at different points he had different approaches. So he was modeling for different reductions. Then it got to a point where he's also now having to monitor social media. He's having to monitor government press releases. He's having to monitor IATA, which is the airline travel industry body, releases. He has to consume and digest that information and then equate that to what he thinks is going to be driving a forecast driver. So that kind of like, we now have to look what's in the news, what's on TV, what are we hearing, and bring our own education to the forecast, because it's just not in the historical data. So the short answer is not really. I don't have a fast way, but we can educate people to be more than button clickers, to look for other inputs that they need to reflect in the forecast.
Great. Thanks. I think very clearly what you mentioned is that we should not be just looking at probably the solution to come out and present a offering in a way that everything will fall in place. You have to have a very intelligent thought process behind. You need to understand the business very well, understand what are the factors that are influencing it, and based on that, it's the art and science of coming out with this thing. Thanks.
Yeah, 100%.
Thank you, Nadia. Hey, Oliver, coming to you. So we've heard about the technologies that are there out there in the market, and which are supporting and providing us what we need in this current situation. What I wanted to understand from you would be, are there any concept technologies or futuristic solutions that NICE probably is working on and can share, probably talk about, that probably is something that we can look forward to in the coming future? I'm not saying that it is ready for deployment right now, but anything that that you can give us a vision of that we can look forward to. I think you're speaking on mute.
That's right. That's
okay. Oh, I can hear.
Sometimes. But you're right. So I mean, there are many. First, I think, during the pandemic as well, we saw many contact center moving as well a lot to cloud. That was number one. But also a lot of contact center, there is a very strong migration from voice to digital, right? And we had also a lot of companies requesting more to have, the adherence of the social media and of how people work, but also the integrations with all the digital channels. That's what we've seen, recently, and also how to monitor people working from home. But of course, I think with all the the virtual reality and augmented reality and all the meta world, I think there will be a lot of new things coming around, which will open additional dimensions for the workforce management. The moment NICE, of course, is investing a lot in AI and all these to make the algorithm easier, to make what was mentioned before, how to make the flex time and the adherence and all these things. But I think with the VR and AR and the meta world, I think we have many new exciting things coming, not immediately, but in the longer term. So that's some of the things that are in mind and in development of all.
Yeah, so like Mark Zuckerberg introduced the metaverse. He was talking about the metaverse. So you're saying we can look something like that from a WFM perspective. More, I think what probably I'm just thinking, from what we just mentioned, and you got a vision. Are we getting more visual in terms of how? So from a gamification and all that, things are getting more visual. We see things more visually rather than just through numbers and interpreting them. So we would be getting more visual, is what I understand, and visual in a way that probably very clearly gives us insights. And I guess intelligence, right? Coming right to this thing, probably people can be more dumber, and machines could get more intelligent and give us more insights in terms of things like that. Great. So yeah, so I'll coming back to the questions from our team members, and I guess I've no one in particular. I just put a question out there. So Mark initially in his keynote speech spoke about how the metrics are evolving. Like your SLA is changing to a XLA, so customer experience is taking control. So from your perspective, and Erica, let me speak to you probably, and probably get a view from everyone else from that, for that matter. What are some of the key metrics that probably you are sort of you've seen evolved during this period? Do you see some new KPIs being looked at right now as compared to what it was earlier? And is some of the earlier KPIs getting irrelevant from your perspective?
Not, I don't think that it's a matter of some KPIs being irrelevant. I think that as you have mentioned, there's probably a slight shift towards metrics that are more related to customer experience, and there's a lot more focus on that. And I think also internal metrics, there's a shift in that to also make them more employee centric, because as we know, employee experience has taken toll during this whole experience. So I've observed that employee it's become very competitive also, because your employee your hiring base has gone a lot more global and distributed, right? So it, in a way, for some industries, it opened opportunities for that. So employers are taking a look at how to better attract resources, right? So I think that there's a shift towards the more employee-centric metrics.
Can you help define if these are quantifiable metrics that you're talking about, or are you talking about purely from a subjective perspective? Are there some of the metrics that you can talk about specifically?
Yeah, well, these are not new metrics. I'm just saying that I think there's a lot more on them, like on our employee satisfaction metrics, and attrition is always, it's always been there. These are things that we've always looked at, but now I believe that it's more concerning, because in areas where we notice that there's a lot more churn, and we have to really look at what's driving that, because the behaviors have changed, and the drivers for these KPIs may have also changed because of the conditions of employees.
Understood. Thank you. Hey, Francie, you want to add something to this?
Absolutely. In operations, aside from the usual KPIs, I agree with Edita. It's more on shifting in priorities. So we focus closely at looking at agent productivity, priority around employee engagement and retention activities. As for the leaders, those who are managing contact center, retention KPI is very critical during pandemic. I've seen a huge focus on organizations running contact center, a huge focus on really investing on employee engagement. It involves ensuring that they've increased the usual connection session with their employees alongside with the strategic plans to really improve the overall employee satisfaction. Aside from employee satisfaction, retention, I've also seen an increase in focus specific on compliance KPI related to customer authentication, risk management. There's been a shift of focus and an increase on that as well.
Thanks, Nancy. I agree. I mean, with this current setup, I guess the compliance and it's compliance both ways. In terms of, because you're not operating idly out of a very secured environment. So it's your infrastructure and your technology that is the only barrier, or the thing that keeps you secured from that perspective, because there is no physical security that is there in place. So I guess compliance and all these metrics have taken a higher precedence in the current scenario. Thank you for that. So now, if you, what I wanted to understand is, in this current environment, what are some of the changes that you observed across different stakeholders within our organization? You spoke briefly about it earlier, but I just wanted to dwell more into it and speak about it. So what kind of relationship changes that you've seen, or what you observed in the mindset also, for that factor, between a client, a customer, employer and employee, and in terms of the current situation? Because I guess some of the things that we have seen in the past, that some of our customers probably wouldn't never have agreed to probably move everyone to a work from home or a remote setup. But now, with this coming in and with absolutely very limited choices in our hand, they have agreed. So is there something that you've observed, seen from a mindset change perspective when it comes to the customer?
Yeah, so we've noticed a significant decrease in the number of calls that we actually receive, and I've tracked that, as most workforce planners and analysts do. But the volume of email, social media inquiries that we've received, as well as portal inquiries and work that's being pushed directly to us from our customer management system through automatic jobs, is just increasing significantly. So we've also introduced web chat recently, however, not very recently, it's in the last 18 months, but we've noticed a lot of customers moving to that channel as well, and it's becoming increasingly popular. When it comes to remote response or the ability to work from home, I remember many years ago, I was driving a remote workforce, I guess. So we have a 24/7 operation because we take fault and emergency calls for electricity supply issues in Queensland wide, which is my state in Australia. And we have an on-call support team. And that depends on what season we're in, whether we're in storm season or we're in winter, in non-storm season. And I had a fleet of remote workforce laptops, which only certain agents were willing or trained in using. It sounds quite primitive now that I think about it. And essentially, we went from a fleet of 10 laptops and having to go through a checklist every week that the person became on call to take this kit home, essentially so that we didn't need to wait for this on-call team to have to drive into the office and start responding to our customers, and we could essentially support our 24/7 fault and emergency officers immediately or within minutes. And that's been a significant shift. So in the past, we've had leadership, management, administration to a degree, workforce planners, ability to work from home, but not overly encouraged or supported to now ultimate flexibility, change in mindset. For a while there, we had a reduction in unplanned absences as well, which aided. I guess if you're feeling a little under the weather and you really can't go to work, but you've got the option to work from home, it does definitely help. One of the other shifts that we've noticed, so I'm in regional Queensland, which is regional Australia, and the job opportunities aren't as vast as what they are in the capital cities. So we haven't had the mass resignation, but we have had a significant increase in requests for part-time work or compressed working weeks, where a person will do full-time work over, say, 8 days or 9 days. We've had, drops in hours, so a significant shift in the hours that people work. We've always had fairly great flexibility and self-service options enabled within the systems that we use, and we've just continued to enhance them and leverage and utilise them, automate as much as possible, I guess. But yeah, those are some of the significant mindset changes I've noticed from multiple aspects of the business and multiple different levels from frontline agents to management to senior leaders.
Hey, thanks, Sunny. Hey, on the same lines, just wanted to probably probe, and I guess this question probably would be for all the other panelists also. So today, with this change, and we were able to set up, and we've seen the clients sort of accepting and agreeing to the remote setup wherever they were reluctant earlier. Tomorrow, and this is a challenge that I've seen in some of the organizations. That's the reason I just want to call that out. Tomorrow, if one of your clients insists that now could be because of any reasons, could be because of compliance reasons, could be because of quality of work, ask people to come back to work, so that 100% back to work. What kind of a challenge are you anticipating, if that call comes out tomorrow? I think both from one employee perspective, that okay, there might be some kind of a resistance. Secondly, from the changes that you have currently made in your work environment itself, in terms of probably releasing some of your capacity, seats, and all that. So just probably understand, and we can start with you, Nairi, and probably I'll go to the other panelist post that.
It's a very timely question, to be honest, because that literally happened yesterday. Okay. So we have been working from home since March 2020, but in July 2020, we're quite lucky in the region that I'm in. We've not been significantly impacted by COVID. We've not even had a case in the town that I live in. It's predominantly been in Brisbane, which is our capital city. So sometimes we are impacted by Brisbane lockdowns or Queensland-wide, go home orders, but fairly unscathed. So in July last year, we commenced returning to the office. So it's not something that's fairly new, but we did have quite a lot of flexible work requests come through for a couple of days at home and a couple of days in the office. And they've been supported by our managers and our senior leaders, which is wonderful because the organisation that I work for does pride itself on flexibility and, flexible work, I guess, and having that balance right between what the business needs and what the people need. Over the last, the reason why we couldn't return 100% in July last year, my building in particular and 3 other buildings for my organisation were not set up correctly for social distancing. So we had workforce, I guess, 50-50. We had people sharing desks not able to sit next to each other. So the leadership team, I was thankfully excused from this task, but the leadership team worked to essentially play jigsaw puzzles with who was coming in on what day and who was staying home, aside from the agents that needed to work permanently in the office for whatever reason. Over the last week and a half, we were asked again to 100% work from home so that our building could be restructured and altered in order to accommodate the entire workforce to return. And that's started yesterday. So it's been successful, to be honest. I am lucky to work with some pretty amazing people, and we're quite a family and a team, I guess. And we have our challenges, but we move on and get over them. So we do have a couple of people that are really finding the transition a struggle, but out of hundreds of agents, a couple of people is okay. We can work with that. And the leadership team is working individually and one-on-one with those people, overcoming anxieties, overcoming fears, just that entire change piece. It's more significant than what we probably give it credit for at the surface level. So yeah, it's something that we're still working through. We do have our state borders are opening on Monday, the 13th of December. So Queensland has been fairly locked down from even states in our own country, but they are all opening on the 13th of December, and we're going to see cases in our region, and we will respond as appropriate, as directed by Queensland Health and our senior leadership and management team. So we're a fairly agile workforce these days. As I said, I think back to when I was trying to establish a remote on-call workforce, and I started with 3 laptops, then I got to 5, then I got to 10. Now I've got hundreds of agents who can work from home. So it's definitely quite a journey, and one that is a credit to our system support teams as well, our leadership teams. Everybody in the business has played their part.
Thank you, Nari. And Narita, do you have any thoughts around, how would you and your sort of organization, manage the change if that happens?
Yeah, and I agree that one of the challenges will be how to ensure that we have the space to accommodate due to physical distancing. But we do have a plan around that. We're constantly in watch of how many people are returning. But if the client, all of us, if it's not in plan and the client suddenly said, hey, tomorrow I want you guys all 100% back to the office, I think it's dependent on multiple other factors as well. Like how easily we could flip back. Also, if there's a technology thing that needs to be changed in the workstations, and then also, of course, the willingness of the employees to return to the office, navigate traffic, and adjust their personal schedules around that. I think it would be the main challenge. And if we do flip back tomorrow, I would expect higher absenteeism. So that's something that we need to plan around, and have a plan around.
Understood. Hey, I don't know if you've lost Francia. I think she's not there anymore. The chair seems to be empty. Anyway, so yeah. So thanks for your response, Arita. Hey, from a nice perspective, I may understand. So Arita spoke about technology, how easy and difficult. And I remember Nadia, you did mention that it doesn't really matter where the person is sitting, whether sitting in office or sitting at home, as long as there is a connectivity. And so from your perspective, do you see what kind of challenges do you see if the environment changes tomorrow and everyone has to sort of come back to office? What would be
I've helped a few organizations with how to use the WFM to model for like square meter rules and things like that, where the office isn't the office that it was. And what I mean by that is maybe pre-pandemic, you were able to comfortably seat 300 employees at capacity, but now due to the distance limitations, that physical location can actually only accommodate 200 employees. So even though the WFM detects the capacity for the workload, there's a physical seat restraint that needs to be built into the model. So we can do some of that as well. That's probably one thing that springs to mind, is that the capacity of the location may not be what it was. Otherwise, I haven't really seen it too much in like a mass return. I think everyone's dipped a toe in the water. A few people have gone back here, gone back there, then they went back home. Now they've, I haven't really seen yet everyone all back all the time. I think if someone asked me to prepare for that for tomorrow, might be a better way to answer it from a workforce management perspective. That would be the one thing that I would need to consider. The seating capacity, is that the same or has it changed? There might be like, are there any additional briefings, some sort of safety thing that people need to go to that they didn't need to before? Is there any other type of meeting that needs to happen to help ease the transition? But otherwise, the shifts would typically still be the same, although there might not be. If people have been working from home, there might be something else to consider, is does the availability change if the commute is now put back into the equation? Because when the commute came out, we saw people going, hey, I don't mind starting at 7 and I don't mind finishing it at 7 p.m. either, because I'm right here, I don't actually care. But when they now have to travel back to the office, they may say, actually, my availability is more constrained. I want to go back to the work rule that I had before. So you may need to do a bit of an audit of your folks and say, hey, you've been on this working rule. Are you going to stick with it now that you've got to travel to the office? And it could also be as well that there is like a phased approach. So perhaps a particular team or a line of business within the organization is going to come in, and we need to look at availability for those people and then gradually roll it out. You may need to look at the supervisors and team leaders and the support staff around, because typically we're not really rostering for those, but they need to be involved in the process and make sure that they know that their teams are being rostered to come back in. You could look at doing things like even gaming the activity codes. That's instead of just saying open time, you could say open in Brisbane for today. You could say that you're open but working from home today, so that when someone looks at the schedule, either via the web portal or mobile device, they can be directed as to what the location should be for them that day. There's a few little bits and pieces, but the forecast shouldn't change. The requirement shouldn't really change, but the net staffing might, if you're doing a little bit with them around extra support, extra meetings, and also if the availability changes. So probably just a little bit of housekeeping. They might need some extra hand holding.
Thanks, Andy. Oliver, anything that you would like to add to that?
It's, as you say, I think it's I mean, what we mentioned, I can really identify, and also I think what Nairi says also on the compliance and some new KPI of compliance, and something which is not really related only to WFM, but people are looking how to multi-factor authentication to make sure that the devices are accessed properly, but also for customer to make sure that the identification of the customer is coming upstream before going to the agent, so that all the complexity of compliance and to make sure that the information that is needed to the agent is probably lesser to avoid any risk of information and compliance. So we see many customers now trying to basically making it using the digital channels or even the voice to make this upstream, so that it doesn't come to the agent. The agent focus on helping the customer but not going through the identification. I think the compliance is, as mentioned before by Edita and by Nairi, very, very important now.
Correct. Hey, so I guess we are sort of to the end of the roundtable discussion. So there are a lot of people listening to us. So so I would just like request closing comments from you to the audiences in terms of what they should look forward to probably in the coming period. So we can start with you, Oliver, and
Okay, so first, thank you very much for all the attendees and to the panel. I think it was very exciting for me as well to hear different opinions for people which we are working with. I mean, in more detail, so they can share basically the challenges of how they've been, managing all these, usually very large workforce in this new environment. So it was very, interesting for me to hear how, the nice WFM solution is being used, and all the challenges that you had, and I look forward to join more time in the future. It was actually my first time for the GWFM to be part of the panel, and I really enjoyed this kind of how you put us on the same table, like the virtual world. Very nice to use all these new technologies, and I think we are learning to use this more in the future with these, as I say, AR, VR, and maybe with the avatars in the future. So I don't know, who knows how it will be. Anyway, thank you very much. It was really, really fun for me to hear different opinions and different from Australia, from Philippines, from India. So really great.
Thank you, Oliver. Hey, Nadia, from your perspective.
From my perspective, yeah, I'll just say thank you. We always appreciate the opportunity to have a chat. To the folks on the call, you're welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn. If you ever have a question or an idea. One of the benefits of my role is I get to see lots of people doing lots of things. And so often I may have seen someone who's struggling with a similar challenge, or it doesn't have to be always about nice product. I'm just happy to connect with people and have a chat about WFM. So you're welcome to LinkedIn with me, and thank you again for your time this afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Nairi,
Ajay,
lost
it has
your
been a great interactions.
we're just taking closing comments, Dr. Shiva, from everyone. So I guess we have Editha and Nairi. So we just close the comments. I know we have sort of gone above the time limit that you had set for us. So we just take the closing comments and then I'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we have some questions also from the audience.
Yeah, sure.
Sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
Nairi, please, from your perspective, or your closing comments, please.
I'd just like to say thank you for inviting me to join today. It's been very insightful and a wonderful opportunity to connect with so many other like-minded individuals. I'd like to echo what Nadia said, and if anybody would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, please feel free to reach out. I do have that article that I wrote, a couple of workforce planning related articles that I've got floating around the web. But yes, very much appreciate this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hi, Editha.
I'd like to thank everyone, first of all, for the opportunity to be here today and hear the insights of my colleagues and these experts. And we truly don't know what the future holds for us. So I think it's really important that we learn from. Nobody wants the pandemic, but I think what we could get out of it is the learnings, right? And how we move forward and how we react to it. Sometimes we need to reflect, right? And I think one of the challenges is sometimes it's difficult for us to relinquish control. For example, when we look at the schedules and how we're managing them, and how we're looking at our employees, but now we need to see at how we should shift towards empowering our employees more, and for them to be able to in some areas make decisions, choose their schedules, and be more flexible. So I think that's what I could say. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining in, and to the audience, thanks for listening in patiently to whatever was being spoken. I really enjoyed the session. It was fun understanding from everyone. What I would probably leave back is I guess it's an ever evolving field, as well as one of the most enabling functions within our industry that we manage. And with all the changes that is happening, I guess it's your passion that would drive you to learn more and understand more in this particular field, more than anything, more than probably what you people are telling in terms of what you should learn, what you should not learn. It's your own passion, I guess, will drive you towards that. And I will leave you with one phrase which one of my very close friends keeps using, and which all the Harry Potter fans would probably be able to relate to, is constant vigilance. Yeah, so that's something that that we can look at from a WFM perspective. Thank you so much. Over to you, Dr. Shiva. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Jim. We have some of the questions from the audience. Let's take that. Sheikh Imran is asking the what we think of WFM innovation perspective, what are the methods WFM can help contributing to increase the revenue? How innovation can result in revenue improvement, increase in the revenue. Maybe maybe you want to know best practices that someone has used it. Probably some use cases if we can share from any of the speakers' perspective.
Okay, so go ahead, please.
Yeah, I mean, from our perspective, when we're helping customers to build a business case for a WFM investment, one of the considerations can be things like an improvement in the customer experience. So when you're able to forecast more accurately, and we spoke about the innovation that's gone into AI forecasting, the closer you can get that number, the better prepared you are to deliver the grade of service that you're aiming towards, right? Whether it's chat, email, or whatever it is. And there's indirect benefits of that as well. Operationally, less overtime and a happier employee and a more balanced occupancy. But for the end customer, they get the greater service. They get through to somebody who's probably happy. They haven't been barraged by angry customers all day long. They may not churn in the way that they otherwise would when they're frustrated by trying to get through to your organization. So all of these things can be contributors to gaining customers and retaining them via your workforce planning practice and technology.
Sure. So increase in revenue from my perspective, when I look at it, there could be two ways that this question is being asked. So I don't know. So one is the fact that, if you are operating out of an enterprise or a captive environment wherein you are supporting your business as a WFM function, or if you are in a third party, as in so whatever you're doing, that itself is a revenue that is coming in. So from an enterprise perspective, I think whatever WFM does, is enhances customer experiences, anything that you do. So your customer retention, your, all those activities that leads to in itself, one secures the revenue and also looks at, if probably looks at increased revenue at a later stage. So that's one thing from an enterprise perspective. But from a third party perspective, anything. So third party perspective, when we look at it, so today, if I bill my client on, calls or something like that. So I guess it's a tricky part when we talk about WFM, to look at WFM to increase the, top line perspective. But one of the things that I look at it is WFM as a service, because WFM as a service, if you can put WFM out there as a service and a potential revenue opportunity by servicing, providing as a service to your end customers, I think that's also a revenue opportunity that you can look at from WFM perspective. And many organizations do that. It's not something new. It's not something that should be surprising. But yeah, that's something definitely that to be looked at.
Thanks, Jed. Do you have any other perspective from other speakers, or can we move on to the next question? All right, we'll move on to the next question. So there's a person, Akhilan Adwan, is asking a question. As you know, the tech hiring is gone, right? Everyone is hiring big time. There's no plans done as of now. What are the steps that we can take to increase joining percentage, considering exclusive and competitive opportunities for tech candidates like full stack developer and etc. This is related to hiring questions. Any of you like to answer this question?
I'm happy to talk, but I'm not in the business of hiring tech staff, just hiring in general. I guess one of the things that I've learned in the last 12 months in particular is that essentially flexibility is the new currency when it comes to employee satisfaction and employee engagement and retainment. So another thing is the benefits that a person gets when they are working for you. And I've gone so far as to, so this is slightly outside of the workforce planning world, but I do actually own a mechanical workshop in my town here in Rockhampton, and trying to find trade qualified staff is quite challenging. So not tech staff, but trade qualified. Similar, it's a specialised skill set, and recruiting Australia-wide. But the thing that I found that has helped has been able to, it sounds quite simplistic to be honest, but putting together a one-page document which outlines the benefits that you receive as an employee. So over and above your everyday wages, the flexibility on offer, the use of vehicles, any other benefits and quirks, what else is it that the organisation can offer the staff member? So from my perspective, it's things such as sponsoring community events and attending. So we receive a lot of tickets to a lot of events around the community, and being able to share that with the workforce, give them the opportunity to represent the business outside of their everyday job, and just being able to provide benefits that exceed basic wages and superannuation in Australia. And it's about the experience of working for a business. So it's not just turn up to work, do my job, go home, but it's also feeling part of the family, feeling as though you're making a significant contribution to the business and what they're delivering. I know that is a little bit outside the realm of workforce planning and customer service centres and contact centres, but the same can be applied when it comes down to employment stability and security. It's what you're offering. The wages comparable? Are they competitive? Are you offering a great culture? Do people want to stay when they get to you? Just these are all the things that I would be thinking about.
Thanks, Nari. That's really been very concise answer. My perspective, something like organizations should initiate build and buy model, borrow model. So building talent internally, upskilling is something very important, because hiring from the market would cost more, and also there'll be delay, and so business is going to suffer. Short-term hiring is fine, but long term we got to really build talent. Rigorous upskilling, cross-skilling, and then skilling is something that's very important. If our organization doesn't do that, it'll be very difficult to have the talent building internally. Considering the fact that great resignations, right? So huge loss of resources, which is happening in the industry worldwide. Very important aspects of is building talent and also engaging talent, developing talent. Okay, these aspects that I feel that something very important. Any of you have any thoughts, you could share it. Otherwise, we will move on to the next question.
I guess both of you covered it very well. Thanks.
Okay, here's the next question from Reynaldo. He says, hello, esteemed panelists. I would like to get your thoughts on having service delivery, that is team leaders, to handle scheduling and managing real-time management.
I am happy to talk to this. However, I do recognise I just answered the last question, so I'm happy to sit down and let somebody else speak.
I'd like to say nobody should do this. You should just have a rules-based self-service platform that lets the software do it. Stop it. I think if the WFM is set up in such a way that it guarantees the desired business outcome, then it shouldn't really matter who is adjusting what. Having said that, it's good to really understand. One of the things that is companies are often challenged by is role clarity in the contact center. And what does a team leader actually mean in your organization, and what should they be doing is often important, and what should the WFM team be doing? And there's no right or wrong answer for any organization. Some people are allergic to this. They hate the idea of anyone touching anything. Other people are a bit more open-minded about it. To my mind, back to my earlier part of the session, is that anyone who has the right permissions can make a schedule change. There's nothing overly it's just one of those things that has to happen in the WFM. So I'd be more looking to see what can we get rid of, not what person can do it, what can the employee do themselves through some sort of self-service, or what other technology can we leverage that it's just all automated wherever possible. Me, I'm for it. I'm for it. If you set up the WFM in a way that they're not breaking anything, they have permissions to the right things. Maybe they can't add in annual leave or something, but they can make slight changes. Maybe they can't go so far into the future, but they can do on the day stuff. You know, give them direction and set it up in such a way that I can spend more time doing smart things like forecasting and less time making schedule changes. That's my 2 cents.
So mine is a
Yeah,
very
I 100% agree. That's exactly how I operate. I leverage the permissions within the workforce planning solution to enable self-service as much as possible so that I can focus on the smart things and not focus on the data entry tasks that I don't want to be doing.
Yeah, and often even the team leaders don't want to necessarily do it either. And you know, I have tried this at different organizations, and some of them were really enthusiastic adopters, and others just like, I'm here to coach people. I'm here to ensure that people can progress through the organization. Why am I doing this? So I think it really comes back to what you want from each role. But if you find that you have the technology to do it and they're not breaking anything, go ahead. It's funny when you integrate WFM to payroll, this is where the notion of who does what to the schedules becomes really important. And so if you are going to link the two systems together, maybe I'll just give you some advice to maybe take a little bit more prudence with the governance of the system and make sure that those team leaders know the impact of adding things late on people's pay if you link the two together. But otherwise, I think try it with limited activities first and see how you go.
So my response would be a little, old school for that matter. So of course, technology is there, and technology is an enabler. But when we look at people, and I won't not dwell into the fact that whether it's a team leader, or for me, it's a scheduler and a real-time analyst, So from a role perspective, we want to put clarity to that. From a scheduler perspective, it's a balancing act for a scheduler. I mean, it could be done from the tool, it could be done from an individual, but the act is that, of course, at one side, you have your business requirement and you need to ensure that, it's being met. On the other side, it's your people requirement. People have preferences, people have challenges, they have their own daily schedules to meet it. So it's the role is to not, put one over the other, but to, balance it out between both. Of course, look at the business requirement, but also ensure that people feel empowered in terms of choosing their schedules, are flexible enough to work through. And that's where probably the tool steps in, and tool helps you to give that flexibility and your that empowerment to people, so that they feel that they own their schedules and they can actually work around that. But also in the background, you're not compromising on the business. So schedulers' role become that tricky, looking at it, and also to adapt to the changes in the environment. So I guess that is also something that needs to be done either through the tool or through the individual who's looking at it. But again, those are certain things that needs to be high on focus when we're looking into that. From a real-time perspective, I guess, again, does not matter whether it's an individual or it's the system which is doing it. What matters is that whether everything is being tracked on time and get reported out appropriately. There should not idly be any surprises when when we're looking at information. A real-time team is a real-time analyst or a real-time function is very critical. Because we can predict or plan up to a certain limit, right? With all the historical information, with all the knowledge that we have, we can put the best plan forward. But who knows, what goes wrong, or what really happens, which could completely change your work environment. And who are there to look at it? It's the real-time folks who are going to look at it and figure out what's happening. And so what we need is a system or individuals who could take quick decisions, adapt, change, and make those kind of changes immediately on a real-time basis. So those are certain key areas probably needs to be focused upon when we look at these different roles.
Thank you. Anyone else to add in? Thank you so much. The next question
I
is
just,
from, sorry. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, I was, yeah, and I agree. At the end of the day, we need to see we're managing according to the interval requirements, right? And the analysis, that analysis sits with the WFM. So I think it's important that you have the people who are capable of making that the decision against what your requirements are. But at the same time, it is a balancing act in that we need to some extent, we're handing this over to the agents themselves, right? In that we add flexibility in enabling them and empowering them to make the decisions around their schedules that still matches your demand curve.
Thank you. So we have Adelina who is asking, is it right to only use calls to do forecasting, or should we include other channel volumes to do forecasting as well?
It's right. Is it right to only use? It's right if that's the only channel that you have. If you have other channels, then it's not right. You need to,
definitely use every channel.
Absolutely. Given the increase also in the non-voice forms, it's important for us to be able to use all available information to be able to forecast more accurately and to gain intelligence if you have, especially if you have multiple queues, so that you know how you could utilize your team, your agents better. If there's a cross-skilling needed or blended, if you need to blend your queues and stuff like that. So it's important to gain as much information as you could to be able to plan better.
So I guess it all stems with the fact that why do you do forecasting at all? What is the reason for forecasting? I guess the reason for forecasting, in a simpler way, is to probably project and ensure that we have the right, effort calculated. We have the right people sitting at the right time of the day, handling those, and servicing those requirements. So basically, if you think, you need to calculate the effort required for other channels and they need to be serviced, so they need to be forecasted also. You need to figure out when to cater them and how to cater them. So yeah, we need to forecast all channels.
Thank you all of you. There's one more question. This from an anonymous person. He asks, how do you address low hiring throughput? He has a follow-up question. How do you plan the concurrency if the trainer is out of capacity? The first question is, how do you address low hiring throughput?
But see, again, it completely depends upon the profiles that you're hiring. If that profile or that skill set that you're looking at is something which historically has proven to give you a low throughput, then probably you need to look at your offers being made and things like that. Because at the end of the day, when you calculate the capacity of your requirement, it's like, for example, you need 10 people, but what you realize is if you tell your recruitment team you need 10 people, you end up getting only 5 people. That means 50% throughput is what you're getting. So either that threshold needs to be set with your recruitment team or your capacity planning team. Instead of telling 10 people, you need to start telling them you need 20 people, so that you end up getting 10 people, and then you have to balance it out with them. Or they need to start looking at, if they need to give your operations or delivery function 10 people, they need to look at how they set up their hiring threshold so that they get the right number of people. Because at the end of the day, in the business, what you need that, if you get less number of people, you cannot run that, you would have challenges. So you need to work towards that. With regards to the trainer capacity, so I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. Yeah.
Let me read the question again. How do you plan the concurrency if the trainer is out of capacity?
Just add, so if you think about what a WFM is all about, it's about answering a question of how many staff do we need to do what to handle a service level, regardless of the media type that they're taking. So we're typically not modeling for things like a trainer's availability. It's not something that you normally run through a WFM system. And it's not normally the type of thing it's trying to answer. You can use things like the meeting planning tools to say that I want to have this number of sessions, and the sessions can overlap or they can't overlap because the same person is going to train them each time. But I'm grasping at straws here. It's not normally designed to say I have a trainer, how available is the trainer to deliver a content. It's more about when is the best time to have that lesson for the people who are attending the class, if that makes sense.
Anyone else to add in?
It's a little bit out of the typical application of WFM.
Look, yeah, it's not really a WFM question, but of course it becomes a WFM challenge because
Yes.
once people get trained, then only they can come into production. So I guess, from that perspective, it's a problem for the training team and the overall delivery. But I guess what I would suggest is, depending upon your capacity for, say, if it's a seasonal business, and I'm assuming you do not have a need for trainers throughout the year, but for a certain period, and that's where you actually face this kind of a challenges. I guess it makes sense if we build certain internal capacity in terms of temp trainers or things like that could enable these kind of scenario and put your checks and balances to ensure the quality of training is in place. But I guess I don't have a great answer for that at this point of time.
Thank you. We have another question from Gaudav Tyagi. This question is, what do you think about the reason of high attrition rates across industry these days, specifically for the last 6 months or so, going back to the great resignations?
Yeah, the markets have opened up actually, so far people have been, working in a closed environment. I guess a lot of thinking happened during this period, behind when they were working from home and all that. People realized what's good for them, what's not, I guess. But the markets have really opened up. I guess, people are hiring, businesses sort of getting back to where it was, pre-COVID days already. And, there is a lot of mobility also that's happening. So that is resulting in high attritions. Apart from that, there are certain calls from certain organizations in terms of how they probably are focusing towards the future of work. And I guess some people like that, some people don't like that. And based on their choices, they are also making those moves. So those are certain things that is triggering this high attrition.
I think I just add it's human nature as well. People are bored. So there's now, like I had, there's more divorces going on now, more relationships breaking up going on now. One of my colleagues said that one of their travel, colleagues said they had the busiest day that they've ever had as soon as they heard lockdowns. Well, people want to do something, right? And they're just being bored with doing nothing. And I honest to goodness, think that's what it is. A lot of these will be lateral moves. They'll go from blue company to green company because it's just a new thing. And this is where we can look at unique ways to differentiate ourselves. But I think it's just a wave of churn that we're just going to have to ride out as best as possible. And it's not that one industry is more attractive than another or one company. It's just people are bored, I reckon. They want to do something. So let's just get a haircut, get a new partner, get a new job, get out of the apartment, and that's just what it is for all of us, I reckon.
I think some companies too handled the pandemic and the move to remote work very poorly. So once we've come out the other side and the job stability was there through the pandemic. It kept people busy, it kept them employed, it gave them consistent income. But once things started normalizing to a degree, then poorly handled response, people are exiting.
Okay, here is another question again from an anonymous person. How would you introduce WFM to operations person who's new to WFM?
The way I do it really is I start with why WFM exists, what our role is, and how we help. I think it's easier for people to appreciate what you do when you tell them how you're able to help make their lives easier and how it impacts them. So it depends on the level of person you're talking to. If it's an agent, I'd probably start with something around their schedules or something like that, or their PTOs, how WFM is helping out to determine the um, schedules and the PTO allocations. And it depend if it's an operations leader, then it definitely something that WFM impacts operations.
Thanks, Valley. Zester, I hope I got your name right. Here's a question saying, what do you do if the operation is pushing back the WFM plan?
What we'll do is, so we have time with time, and some of them are getting ready for the next meeting. So probably we could take those additional questions offline, and also we could answer them.
This was the last question.
Yeah, we can take this as last question. Yes.
Ask them to sign it off and tell them, tomorrow anything fails, that's on you, not on me. But yeah, so I guess basically repercussions. So basically what you need to explain is, if someone is pushing back, you just need to explain what happens. And I guess they're pushing back for a certain reason. They might be giving certain points. Probably it could be budget constraints in terms of, or they might have a thought process. Okay, what you're saying is not correct, and we could do with. And I'm assuming when someone pushes back, they're trying to reduce or the number of resources, or increase the number of resources that you are suggesting based on your plan. So I guess take that as a scenario, run it for them, and show them, the impact of that. And based on that impact, they can make a decision whether they are okay to go through that challenge. And if that works for them, then it's okay. I mean, so you are an enabler. You are trying to give them options. We're not trying to force any solution onto anyone, but we are giving them more and more options. So I would say it's not required for you to probably enforce any plan onto anyone, or tell them this is what it should be done, but rather give them options, multiple options based on their requests, and based on that they can pick and choose. Of course, give them the impact of each of the solutions that you're providing, and based on that they can pick and choose what meets their requirement.
And I think if you've got a really strong relationship with the people that you're working for as well, that is fundamental, so that when you do clash, then it's a robust discussion, but you've already built the relationship, and you've already you know how to work with that person, and you're able to articulate the impacts quite clearly because you understand their learning style. Quite often, as you would all experience, this workforce planning and analytics is above the heads of some of the people that manage the frontline teams. So it's really being able to break it down into a solution that is understandable. Like this is the real impact, the genuine impact to the customer, and the genuine impact to the agents. I find quite often that the pushback is because it's a silo vision, and the person who's pushing back is only able to see one solution that they're fighting for, but they're not recognising the impact to the entire business. You've got to break those silos down.
Absolutely. With this, we would conclude the roundtable and GWFM NICE ASEAN WFM Summit 2021. We will have the discussions continuing offline, and all the leftover questions, we can answer it offline. Okay. So with this, on behalf of GWFM and NICE, we express sincere gratitude to all the speakers, Jim, Nairi, Francis as a step chaired the call, and Edita, Nadia, and all you are, and Mark has been great learning and enriching experience sharing, and great insights. Thanks, Janice and Natalie, for facilitating this to have this as a last event where we want to end with a good note where we leave a lot of informations. And 2022, we begin with the big bang with new insights. And we have had around 340 registration, and around on and off, we had around 200 people, 220 people have joined on and off because of the timings. So we really thank all the distinguished speakers for taking your time out in your busy schedules. And this has been streamlined. I mean, we went on streamline. Live stream, and this video is going to be made available, and also like presentation that we have shared is also going to be made available for all the audience. Thanks, audience, for all your support, for being attentive and lovely questions that we have asked for. It's very great learning, and we'll all answer your questions in the text, and also we'll get in touch with each one of you. Thank you so much. With this, we close this session. Thank you so much again for everyone. Have a great day, and have a pleasant evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.